Any particular order that we would like to go through these?
We will we have a slide here with it. We thought we would do them based on how they will be shown in the budget. So first up, and the ones that are highlighted in blue are those that had requested to speak.
Do we have a representative from Meals on Wheels online?
Yes, hi. My name is Anita Lonecker. I am the program supervisor for Meals on Wheels for Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a bit about your request?
Yes, we have been serving Meals on Wheels in Lynn County, well, Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln County for over 40 years. And one of the cities that we have continued to serve is Millersburg. Last year, we served 3 residents. I know that doesn't seem like that many. And those 3 residents received 246 home delivered meals. So 5 days a week, we drive to Millersburg, we knock on their door, we make sure they're okay, we check their welfare, and we serve them a hot meal. The mayor, Mayor Lapine, has gone with me to deliver Girl Scout cookies to one of the residents, which is another partnership that we have. Every year we get a donation of Girl Scout cookies, and we provide those to our home delivered members. We operate without a wait list, so anybody that needs meals within the city of Millersburg are welcome to sign up. We only require that somebody has to be 60 or older and classified as homebound. And all homebound means is they have a difficult time leaving their home, or it requires effort. It doesn't mean that they can't leave their home. It is a free service. We do not ask anything from any consumer. We don't look at income. It's specifically based on need. All of our meals are nutritionally balanced for our older population. We work with a registered dietitian to meet federal guidelines to make sure our meals are low in sodium, diabetic friendly, and we offer 2 entrees that each consumer gets to choose from. And if needed, we also provide weekend meals. Oh, I'm so sorry. We also do a pet food program. We work with Safe Haven, and they donate food to us, and we deliver it once a supplemental pet food to home delivered consumers also.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
I used them for 3 months last year myself because I was homebound.
We do provide temporary meals for consumers under 60 if they have, if they're recovering from a heart attack or have some type of significant medical condition and they need meals also. And as you can see, Barry's still alive, so the meals weren't that bad.
Yeah.
So I have some questions actually. First one is this: as far as funding, do you guys have any other cities that donate or?
Well, we have what we call member asks. So we have members of Oregon. We fall under Oregon Cascade West Council of Governments. Mm-hmm. They took over the meals program in 1980. We do ask our members, and then we write grants to like the city of Philomath. This is the first year we've written a grant, an actual physical ask for Millersburg. Usually it's done through our member ask program. But yes, we do ask individual cities for donations.
And do any of them, have they donated in the past or?
Oh, yes. Yes. The only city that we don't currently ask for donations from is, oh goodness. I'm trying to think. I don't think that there is one. Mill City, they have, they provide us a mill site at the church in their town and help facilitate our program in their city. But most of the other cities, even the Siletz tribe, we have a contract with them because we provide meals to elders.
This is Jim. This is one of the most awesome, needed, humbling, however word you want to use, volunteer organizations in our community. They do a tremendous job and really help other people in many ways. It's not just the food, it's the interaction and caring that goes with it. I've seen it, it's awesome. We need to support this.
And I would encourage you, if you would like to come along and do a ride-along, the meal site is in Albany, but you're more than welcome to do a ride-along once we get back to so-called normal, to see what we do and see how we interact with the people that we serve.
Okay, so
Dennis, do you still deliver? Dennis, are you delivering food?
Yes, I am.
Yes, he is. Sorry.
Yeah.
I deliver 45 meals a week.
Hi, Dennis.
Some of the folks that we deal with, they depend on us to make sure that they're okay and actually to call the fire department when they're not. And we've done that numerous times here just in the last few months. This is a very important program. And going through what we're going through right now with the virus, we are still delivering hot meals. They only have one choice now, but we are still delivering hot meals to them. Some areas, Salem, I believe, is one, is dropping off a frozen meal on the front porch and knocking on a door. A good portion of our people can't bend over and pick that up. So this is a needed program.
I'm sorry, Scott, you had other questions?
Yeah, no, following up on my question, you talked about the Siletz tribe. They do grants for elders. Is elder somebody that you normally wouldn't bring?
No, for their Native American elders.
Okay, perfect. So as far as other cities, when you say grants, can you describe one of them, possibly a local city, and then what they give money for? Is there strings attached, basically?
So, for example, the city of Philomath, I'm in the process of writing a grant for them right now also. And how the process works is they require, just like you do the electronic form or a form with who I serve within their community, what the program is based on, and then they also request a final report to show how the money was spent, how many people we did actually serve in their area. The other ones, they don't require grants. They just require us to provide documentation of the service that we're providing.
Okay, perfect. So like City of Albany, for instance, they give money towards the program. Is that correct?
Yes, they have budgeted $6,500. But then we also get money from Lynn County.
Correct.
So it's multiple organizations in Albany that we write to, but Albany does give us money and so does Lynn County.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lane, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just echo what the mayor said. My mom participated in this program for a few months before she went into assisted living, and they were extremely accommodating, very quick, and just the very, very, very kind people with volunteer, a lot of volunteers. I think it's mostly volunteers, and I support it, and to the extent that it meets the city's requirements for outside agency donations, I would hope that it can be approved.
All right.
I would just like to say thank you so much for the time to be able to speak to you this evening. I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate the stories. And I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, real quickly.
Please.
So one of the things we did, since we had some, as Anita just mentioned, we did send out the donations and sponsorship request form. This is an application that came about based on conversations started with the budget committee last year and was finalized by the council. So they went out, and I believe everyone was sent the information on that. So because we had some that wanted to speak, we thought now would be the time to address those. I will tell you that in the budget, what we included in our budget currently, and these can be adopted, we included the amounts that were approved in last year's budget. So right now we have the 1,000 that Meals on Wheels is requested. What we are showing programmed into the budget right now for ABC is 5,000. Boys and Girls Club is 5. Fair Expo, 3,000 they requested, and Northwest Art and Air, 2,500, which they've requested and we've done in the past. Those can be changed, but I just wanted to let you know so that you have a context of where they are based on what their requests were. But our hope was that while they are here, as you address each one, you could take action on how you would like to handle those, so that if there was further questions of any of those members. That's not required. If you wanted to wait until you get into the budget, that is fine too, but that's why we have them up at this point. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I would like to go through each of the applications, and if we have a representative of the applicant online with us, if they could give us some commentary, that would be fantastic. Any other discussion from the committee on Meals on Wheels' application? All right. I believe Mrs. Gilmore is with us on the ABC House.
Hello. It's nice to see you all. My name is Jenny Gilmore Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of ABC House. And thank you very much for the opportunity to request funds. And thank you very much. I echo what Anita said. Thank you very much for past support as well. For those of you who don't know what we do, ABC House is the Child Abuse Intervention Center that serves Lynn County and Bend County. So for 23 years, almost 24, we've been providing expert, compassionate child abuse assessment and support services for children with concerns of abuse and neglect. We work closely with law enforcement and child protective services in the medical community and the mental health community to help identify abuse when it's occurring, and when it is, to help kids and their families heal. We serve through our child abuse assessment services approximately 700 children a year. Last year, as you'll see from our application, we confirmed that there was at least one child from the city of Millersburg, and actually thanks to one of our family support advocates today who did a deep dive into our data, we believe that there was actually another 3 children who are estimated to be from the Millersburg area, depending on where on the map their homes fall. This is an unprecedented time, I think, for many nonprofits and particularly those of us in social service. ABC continues to deliver emergency child abuse assessment services and consultation, as well as family support and trauma counseling. Our on-site services at this point are currently limited to emergency cases only, those cases that it cannot safely wait. And so other types of assessment services and mental health services are being served remotely through telehealth whenever possible. Our physicians in particular are working around the clock particularly in emergency medical consultations, but also responding to the emergency room to help law enforcement and child protective services make those real-time decisions about whether or not it's safe for children to remain in their homes. Furthermore, we are anticipating, we are really bracing ourselves for a surge in the number of children who will be expected to be referred for child abuse assessment services. For many children, home is not a safe place. And right now we've got children who are in their homes with people who are not safe for them. And what's more, without the safety nets that we normally have in place, like mandatory reporters, our school staff, our Boys and Girls Club staff, our KidCo Head Start staff, all of those individuals who keep their eyes on kids to make sure they're safe, and when they're not, making reports accordingly. Every year, in terms of after vacations, holidays, anytime that children are in a period of isolation and away from those safer adults, we always experience an uptick, a surge in the number of referrals. And all those who are working in child welfare now, we're all just bracing for this to continue, to have a real surge in the number of cases that we're going to see once the social distancing requirements decrease. I will say that we are continuing to see kids on site every single day, and assessments with, of course, protections. And that's created some fascinating challenges. And every day we're just solving the problem in front of us. I think, like many nonprofits, we're experiencing some pretty significant economic impacts as a result, but the work continues, and we're doing the best we can to mitigate those losses, even while we are continuing to make new investments in things like equipment, sterilization equipment, personal protective gear, so that all of these services can continue. Because if our services stop, these services will not continue. No one else does the work that we do, so we're continuing to do it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
Well, I would like to make a comment, and that is that I think that you provide a unique and extremely important service, and I hope that the city can support you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
I've got a question. So it's Jenny, right? Jenny. So yeah, you always Jennifer on this paper. So I just want to make sure that I got that correct. So couple of quick questions, and really it runs down to, and the reason I'm asking these questions is because of our donation qualifications here. So I'm trying to
absolutely
some of the boxes. So can you explain kind of how your funding works?
Yes.
Where do you guys get funding from?
Absolutely. So it's a mix. We have a pretty diverse revenue stream. We don't receive any tax dollar funding from the state, which is unfortunate, despite the fact that our services are mandated by the state to be performed for Lynn County and Benton County. About 25%, anywhere roughly 20 to 25% of our funding comes from insurance reimbursement. So no family is charged any dime out of pocket. If they do have insurance, we will bill that insurance, and that's for things like the medical exams or for mental health counseling. Unfortunately, insurance reimbursement is pretty challenging. We get about 29 to 30 cents on the dollar, and the rest has to be subsidized in another way, which leads me to state and federal grants. So we write for those every 2 years, and those again come from the state and from the feds. That's about another 30% or so. The good news is we're grateful to have it. The bad news is that they're not tied to demand. And so if we see an increase in the number of children, as we did last year, the amount of money doesn't go up. And so the other 50% of what we do is all fundraising. So writing grants, reaching out to funders, fundraising events. Unfortunately, Celebrate Hope, our annual fundraiser this year, has postponed, so we're doing the best we can with that. And then just pure community giving. So it's pretty diverse, and we worked hard to be that way so that we're never dependent on one single type of funding. But we love our funders.
No, that's absolutely great. So is there any other cities that donate to this cause?
Yes, there are. And one of the things that I have to say that I appreciate so much is that just because a city is small in population size doesn't mean that they're not more generous than some of their larger counterparts. So right now, actually, the ones that give most generously are the city of Millersburg and also the city of Philomath, as Anita mentioned. We do not receive funding from the city of Albany. We do receive funding from the city of Corvallis through their social service funding. And that's actually as part of a co-project with the United Way. So the United Way actually coordinates that effort. And then Lynn County, while they don't fund us outright, they have made opportunities available for us. So for example, Lynn County receives Justice Reinvestment Act grant funding, and they have the opportunity to direct a portion of that towards crime victim services nonprofits, and they selected us to be one of them. So although the funding is not, it's pass-through funding from the federal government, Lynn County made it available to us So we're funded so lots of different ways.
That's great. So just out of curiosity, do you know how much like Philomath by chance last year donated? Do you have an idea?
Yes, it was roughly $3,000. It was roughly, and I'm happy to check for you, but it was roughly $3,000, maybe a little bit more.
Now, what about Corvallis? And I know they went through United Way to coordinate it, but do you have
Sure. That was 23,000.
23,000. Wow, nice. And do they give that basically every year, or was that just kind of a one-off year?
You know, it varies every year, but it's roughly it's roughly yeah, I think sometimes it ebbs and flows depending, I think, on their grant funding pool and what they can give away and what they can give out. But it's relatively I would say that's, I don't know why I'm hedging and hawing. Yes, I think that's roughly the same. Roughly the same. And sometimes we see it goes up and a little bit up and a little bit down. And that's been our experience, of course, with the city of Millersburg as well. It really depends on what you have, what you're able to share.
Absolutely. So, and just to clarify that, even though it goes through the United Way, that is from the actual city, right?
Correct. And it's the city council that actually votes on it and approves it. It's just that I think it's just that the United Way is actually just coordinating the application effort.
Okay, no, that's great. And just out of curiosity, and I don't know if you know what this number is, but an average child that comes through there, what's kind of your guys' cost per child, kind of a thing? I
do. So a child abuse assessment service is, well, I can tell a medical exam is about $2,200 for a medical exam. An interview is about $1,000. Family support services cost about $400 per child, and that's of course through the life of the case. Our family support continues not just while they're on the site for the appointment, but we're checking in with them periodically, 2 weeks after the appointment, then another 2 months later, another 2 months after that, for as long as they need us. Counseling is roughly I think it's $285 per session. And so so all of it really depends on the services that a child experiences. I think the average cost for a child going through our child abuse assessment services, recognizing that not every child gets an exam, an interview, I think the average cost is about $2,900.
Okay, perfect. And then you said this year or last year we had roughly about four kids from Millersburg.
That's what it's looking like. One for sure, and that was in order to confirm it, it's one where that was a family that self-identified. We get for families who are seen on site, we of course get their address information. Most of the time, though, the families who are coming from Millersburg, of course, their mailing address says Albany.
Yeah.
But we did have one family who actually, that's what they listed their address was Millersburg. And then today, we actually anticipating, because I love that you ask this question every year, because you want to, I get it. You want to make sure that these funds are actually benefiting your citizens. We took the opportunity to actually really dive down deep into our data. And to pull those families that were referred from Albany, had the Northeast designation, and from there we identified 5. 2 of them, before we ran out of time, one of them we were able to eliminate as being on the other side of Conster, and so at this point it's 1 for sure. But the greater likelihood is that there are at least 2 and probably 3 more. The other piece that's always worth mentioning is that anytime a child is taken into foster care, their address automatically becomes the DHS office in Albany. And so that's a big chunk. That can be anywhere from a good 20 to 30% of our kids that we're seeing. So automatically that skews the data, so that makes things a bit challenging. But we're doing our best to get you those data points every year if we can.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. I mean, it's one of those things that I always get asked of why we spend funds, and it's something that we kind of want to have an answer for that. So that's part
absolutely.
You guys do an absolutely great job. It's a great organization, and thank you for coming. So.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for. I want to tell you that we don't take your support for granted. And any amount that you are, if you were able to fund us this year, any amount will be welcome, and we'll put it to great use.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I just want to I just want to chime in, like Darren, I truly, truly appreciate Jenny and her organization. I've known her for some time in a prior life and prior volunteer efforts. I worked with her, and I know what they do. My wife and I both contribute a little bit each year to them. But I tell you what, if we have 3, 4, or 5 in Millersburg today,
Mhm.
that's a hard number to tell you to understand that. And, as we are growing, those numbers are going to go up. And we need to be prepared for that and provide the resources for that support and be prepared to do that. And I know they may not want to hear this. I know where a lot of cases might be coming from, from cities who can't afford to support ABC House because of their tax base or lack of industry, so forth. So I hope we continue to support this. I personally will. They do a great job, highly needed in our community. They do awesome. There's so many kids out there need help. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Oh, Jenny, I actually had one other question real quick that I just thought of. So let's say that the ABC House, if the ABC House wasn't there, if you guys weren't able to provide the great services that you guys do now, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't that fall more back on law in enforcement then? Would it be a harder job for them, or how does that work? So what do you guys kind of fit into that picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were one thing to be aware of is we were actually founded by law enforcement and child protective services in the medical community. That multidisciplinary team, they identified early on that this model, new at the time model, they wanted Lynn and Benton counties to benefit from that. What we know is that if there is no Children's Advocacy Center, if there is no CAC like ABC House in the community, what happens is that children they receive assessment services in the emergency room by doctors who don't actually have training in child abuse medicine. Child abuse medicine is actually not taught in pediatric residency or emergency residency. It's not really taught in medical schools. We're working to change that. We also know that if a child's going to be interviewed without a center, they're more likely to be interviewed in a police station, or worse, in their home, where perhaps there actually might be the suspect. And I think the greatest challenge of not having a CAC, this whole idea, the whole basis of why we exist is for a collaborative approach that puts the child at the center, that takes the burden off of kids, and that the agencies that are tasked with the investigation and response are all working together. So without a CAC, those services that are happening not as effectively, and those individuals who are involved are not talking to each other, they're not working together, and that means that there's a greater burden on the family. That's actually how the idea was born for the very first Children's Advocacy Center in Huntsville, Alabama, was because of a child and their caregiver, their grandmother, who voiced their frustration to the district attorney, as saying that we have talked to no fewer than 11 different agencies. And nobody's talking to each other. And why should the burden be on us as the victim? And that's actually how the very first CAC was born, the National CAC in Huntsville, Alabama.
That's interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you. But you would say if the ABC House wasn't there, then law and enforcement would definitely spend a lot more time on those cases, correct? It definitely take a lot more of their resources.
Oh, heck yeah. We know that I can't believe I just said heck yeah in public record. But we know that not only do CACs, they save money. So because it's a more collaborative investigation with information sharing, it actually saves on staff time. We also know that there is a more effective prosecution rate. Saving costs there as well. I think a big part of it is actually it's reducing the duplication of services. And by intervening earlier, we're actually, and by connecting, identifying abuse and connecting children to healing services like mental health, we're actually averting some of the more costly impacts that happen later on. There is documented, confirmed, study after study evidence that shows that children who experience ongoing traumas as children without care, without getting the ability to heal, are more likely to suffer really costly health impacts later. Everything from absenteeism and lost workplace productivity to cost to the juvenile justice system and the adult justice system. It costs something like the lifetime cost to the community for one child abuse victim is approximately $800,000. And so if we can intervene early with law enforcement, with child protective services to make children safer and get them on the path towards healing, we can actually save our community those costs in the long run.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I absolutely see that. That's absolutely right. It was kind of I was just trying to get that answer. So,
No, thank you.
Yeah, thinking with like a sports program, same thing there is as far as what they see from kids that participate in that, later on. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any further questions or comments for Jenny or about the ABC House? Thank you, Jenny. Always a pleasure. Thank
you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Anderson, are you with us for the Albany Boys and Girls Club?
Yes, sir. I am right here. Appreciate you guys giving me the time. Once again, if I haven't met you, my name is John Anderson with the Boys and Girls Club of Albany. We are primarily, and a lot of you have been through our facilities and have been part of the program. Some of you probably have grown up or have kids growing up through the program. So primarily we are an after-school program. We have also our athletic leagues and then our dental clinic. Right now, our facilities are closed, but we are remaining to keep busy. We are helping the community by serving breakfast and lunch. We are taking all of our programs and activities online. And so every day, club kids can go online and watch our staff do activities and programs. I think last week we had about 7,700 views on our programs. And then on a weekly basis, right now we are providing activity packs, about 150 activity packs that we're passing out on a weekly basis. So as kids are coming through, getting their food for the day, they can grab an activity pack and utilize some of those supplies that are in those bags, watch our staff online and follow along. So in those bags are arts and crafts, math worksheets, science experiments. Sometimes we have playing cards because one of our programs is magic tricks that kids can follow along and do. We also have our dental clinic as open for emergency cases. Soon we will be providing some face masks to our kids and also doing some online basketball tournaments. So like I said, our buildings are closed right now, but we are definitely keeping busy to make sure that the kids have an outlet on a daily basis. But I'll go more into our grant requests. I appreciate and thank the City of Millersburg for the support that we receive on an annual basis. We did look in our database and saw that we had 121 Millersburg kids go through our program in 2019. And as of 2020, we had 94 signed up so far. About majority of those kids partake in our athletic programs. So your basketball, baseball program, soccer, and volleyball. And there are about 40% of those kids are also part of our after-school program. So in our after-school program, they're utilizing homework help, our dinner program, science, technology programs, a variety of things, whatever. We want to try to cater to everybody's interests. So when they come into the building, there's always something for them. So in our grant application, we concentrated, and I thank you guys so much for putting the application together this year and having that official standard that you've set. That gave us a direction to head towards. And we looked at, since a majority of participants from Millersburg were in that sports program, we requested funds to go into 4 areas. Now, we understand that last year we received $5,000 in support. We requested about 10, but that is just wanted to give you guys an option of which ones you can pick and choose. And so we looked at 4 different sports events and sports leagues. So you'll see We had a bunch of Millersburg kids that participated in our Hoop Jam event that was over at LBCC. We had about over 160 teams, so over 2,000 people were in attendance in that. So we had a lot of presence. We also looked at our fall basketball league, our baseball program in the spring, and then also our soccer program in the fall. What we saw was that we don't really have presence of Millersburg in our building, and showing that you guys are our partners. So on that application kind of recognizes you as official partners of the Boys and Girls Club, and officially highlights you as a sponsor of the club. And so we wanted to give you some recognition on that. So in your application, you should see some of our ways to give you some recognition and show our appreciation. And so this before the $5,000 was going into a general fund to help athletic programs and our after school program. This request this year is towards certain sporting events and sports leagues, so that we can recognize you guys for those. And those were the areas that we saw a lot of Millersburg kids participate in. Some of you may say, well, how come volleyball is not in there? Like I said, we looked at the sports that were participated by a majority of our Millersburg families. And so, like I said, 121 kids in 2019, and about 40% of those kids utilize the after-school program and the athletic program. So, those kids were there starting at 3 o'clock and all the way until whenever their practice is over. So until, sometimes 8:30, 9 o'clock, depending on the sport. So we definitely get a lot of families coming through, and we appreciate the support. We have not done a very good job recognizing our partners. And so this is our goal at making sure that you are seen by those Millersburg family as an official partner of the Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I was gonna go a little bit further, but Jennifer took my minutes away from me, so I'm gonna cut myself short now. Yeah, you're on mute, so you don't get any more time.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Really, Scott? Nothing?
Oh no,
Come on, let's go.
Somebody else go
Let's
first.
go.
I'm gonna be that guy who's coming in.
I'm waiting.
Scott asked the best questions.
I know, I'm waiting.
And I always like it. You actually answer them before I even ask them. So they're absolutely great. So the one question I have actually was just more bringing it up that I didn't see on this was and I know it may not happen this summer, but we were planning on this summer having those programs out at the Millersburg Park, right?
Yeah, we are still planning on that, but like I said, I mean, the climate right now is just unpredictable. So I didn't want to include that on there because we already established those flyers with you guys partnering with us. And so, and I just didn't know whether that was going to be a go or not. So I just didn't include that on there. But primarily on the application is just giving you guys an idea of picking and choosing which program you wanted to support. It wasn't to push the issue on, no, you need to double the funding to the Boys and Girls Club, but just to give you some options.
Okay. No, that's absolutely great. And I think just to throw it out there for the budget committee, the people that didn't hear about that was I think you guys were doing that program out at the park at cost, basically. I mean, there was a cost to do it.
Yeah. That was just, with the talks with some of the folks at City Hall was with Kevin and Janelle. We wanted to bring the activities to Millersburg. And that's kind of Boys and Girls Club for the last, 50 years has been centralized. And so our move now is to get to where the kids are. And so our thought was Millersburg is a great place. And there are a bunch, and some of you heard me say that, my wife complains about not having options for our kids to be a part of in town. So the plan was to do sports camps 4 weeks in July at Millersburg Park during the morning time. And yeah, it was, this was a trial. And so our key goal, and a lot of our key terms with at Boys and Girls Club is just to break even. You know, I mean, our cost per kid for our program is about $1,000 per child. And so we charge $25 for membership. And depending on the sports, it's anywhere from, you know, $35 to $50. So about $900 of the cost we do through our annual fundraisers and grant writing and individual ask. And so as a trial and as a show that we want to expand into the Millersburg area because we know that it's a growing area, we wanted to do those summer camps, and it's still on our radar to do. It's just whether the mandates are going to allow us to do it is the question.
No, that's absolutely great. And just out of curiosity, I know I'm going down through these programs. Obviously, Hoop Jam is at LBCC.
Yeah.
The K to third basketball, obviously, we don't have the facilities for you to do it out in Millersburg. So it's obviously the Boys and Girls Club. Same with the indoor soccer. But the T-ball program, and I know back when you guys had JBO, you used the Millersburg Park. Is the T-ball program using Millersburg Park or?
Yeah, so right now it's a growing program for us. We've been able to centralize it at Kinder Park, but we are seeing a big growth and also some complaints about having to travel into the city. So we do want to utilize Millersburg Park, but at this point, you know, it won't be this year because we're too far into the season now. I mean, season should have started, practice should have started right now. And so we're looking for that in the next year to be able to utilize facilities in Millersburg.
Okay, perfect, great. And just to throw it out there, I mean, I thought it was interesting. This was from JBO. I heard these numbers this year, but the South Albany JBO, the number that I heard from them was 25% of their kids are actually Millersburg kids. So
yeah,
small Millersburg or South Albany, that's an amazing amount of our kids are doing sports. So
that's probably, if we look deeper into the numbers, that 121 is a drop because we did lose some kids when we gave up the JBO program. And I think it was about 25, 30 kids that we lost to that program. And the reason that we dropped that baseball program was it just didn't fit in our mission. You know, at certain levels, sports gets somewhat competitive. And so we wanted to concentrate on the development of younger kids, learning to love the sport rather than, and if they want to get into higher level of competition, we thought that there was other programs in town that were able to do that. And so it was nice to have that baseball program, but it just didn't fit anymore into our mission. And we're so happy that the high schools decided to take that on. It enabled us to concentrate more on our T-ball and pitching machine program, which we had a growth in this year. And it was just simple. We put up a home run fence for the little kids. And anytime someone hit a home run, not just the parents, but the entire crowd went nuts because, you know, you hit a home run off and let me tell you, T-ball is not the funnest sport to watch. Okay, let's be honest. But by adding the home run fences for the little kids, I mean, it made it a lot more exciting. Even once it hit the fence and bounced back, it was back into play. You know, sometimes in T-ball, you get a big hit and all of a sudden you're waiting for the kid chasing the ball down to throw it back into the infield. So, but we see a growth in that. To answer your question, Scott, we do see growing that T-ball and pitching machine program, and we are going to need Millersburg Park to be able to host some of those practices. I know that when we had the baseball program, we had a third, fourth grade team on there, and then also I think a softball team was utilizing Millersburg. But we understand that Millersburg is a growing population, and we want to make sure that we bring our programs into the city so that folks don't have to travel very far.
Okay, great, thank you, John.
Anyone else? Well, I'd like to thank those that attended online this evening with us. Thank you very much for your presentation. We will be deliberating these with our budget this evening. Mr. Kreitzman.
Yes. So just a comment. You did receive applications from both the Lynn County Fair and Northwest Art and Air Festival. Both of those programs, they still don't know where, if they're still going to be going on or not with it. But when we get to that, if you wanted to, if you were comfortable with what you saw from them, I know we've in the past, Council and Budget Committee had supported those for quite some time. You could make options to do it based, approve those tonight. So, and I didn't know if the Budget Committee wanted to make, wait until you get to those items to make your determination once we get into the budget, or if you want to do it now so that those that were with us could be aware. But that's the choice of the chair and the Budget Committee.
Well, I'll defer to the group as a whole. I'm open either way.
I'm fine with doing it now, Mark.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you have your hand raised?
Yes, just to let you know, I spoke with the manager of the county fair today, along with Rhonda, their account person, and just try to get a little bit of an idea of what was going on financially. And we are one of 2 cities that fund the fair. I know this is a question that's been out there for a while. It's us in Albany. Albany funds it in a big way. In fact, if I recall, last year they spent a couple $100,000 on horse stalls and so forth. But Albany gets money as a result of the fair through the hotel tax as well. So anyway, the question has been that we've been asked is, are we the only city funding? And no, it's also Albany, but that's it, pretty much. Just a little bit of data I thought I'd pass on to you. And then they're going to make a decision next Monday as to whether or not they're going to have a fair or what it might look like. So that's up in the air.
Okay.
That's
Thank
all
you,
I had.
Mr. Mayor.
That's all I had.
And just so you're aware, Albany's in a similar spot. Nicole, who filled out the application, shared with us that if need be, that she would be happy to be at our next meeting. If not, if you had questions on it, but they're kind of in a similar spot right now on whether it would continue or not this year.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion on the 2 applications that were not verbally presented tonight?
Mayor, this is David Denos. Do we have any idea how many of our citizens attend the Lynn County Fair?
I don't know how you would know that. And how many times they go.
Right, I don't know if the fair has that information or not. I'm just kind of wondering how many
No,
of
I'm
our-
sure they don't.
Yeah.
I would almost bet you they do not.
Mr. Anderson, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Mark, I just wanted to ask if you wanted us to stay on, or do you guys want us to go log off so that you can talk freely about us? I know Dave likes to make fun of me, so I'm just gonna, look it up on public records later on to see what he says. So
Exactly. So why not just talk in front of everyone instead of behind their backs?
well, because I might cry if he hurts my feelings.
I don't believe that.
There's no crying in baseball. Dennis, you have your hand raised.
Yes, both Lynn County Fair and Art and Air, don't they give us advertising for our Millersburg celebration?
Yes, they do. In fact, they gave us a booth space last year so we could advertise and interact with the community during the event. Also, they were attempting to partner with us in such a way that they were going to help us during our celebration by donating chairs and tables and a bunch of items like that. At the last minute, backed away because they had an event that they were unaware of that they could not do that. But there's kind of an attitude of partnering between the 2 groups. Jenny, our leader, knows their leader, and they have been communicating extensively. So there's an ongoing partnership there.
Well, it kind of felt that way.
And Millersburg has been a part of that process since the beginning. With ATI, Albany, and Millersburg have been the key sponsors. However, we do not play a leadership role in the Art and Air Festival. We just donate, and they work with us on ours. We're trying to.
Okay, thank you.
And I would mention that, as the mayor mentioned, this year there was a conflict. They're planning on coordinating with us in the future to make some of those things available that they are. That's
Yeah.
been discussed with Albany.
Okay. I think there was quite a bit of great discussion and deliberation. I would entertain a motion if there is one out there.
Well,
On-
Mark, can I
Yes.
bring one thing up first? Okay, so, and I don't know, was this sent out, Kim, to, if Kim's on this, to all the budget committee members as far as our criteria for donation sponsorship requests?
Yes, everything was sent out.
Yeah,
Okay, was sent out. So that's probably one of the things, is this was a document that the city council approved last year to kind of give us some guidance on how and when we donate or sponsor any program. So I would almost say that we, because we haven't done that with any of these programs yet, and these are the ones that are, we have been funding for a while, we'd almost talk about that for each of these programs. So and that's part of the reason for a lot of my questions. So was to kind of go with this document.
Thank you.
So Mark's looking for a motion, right?
That's correct.
Well, I'll set my neck out. I'll make a motion that we approve the budget as presented for the agency request donations, the five donations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a second?
Second, Barry.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, please use your voting buttons. All opposed, same voting buttons. It's the red one. In case you're colorblind, it would be to the right. Or the other red one.
Mr. Chair, if you could, when you have the vote, just maybe state what yes and which ones were the number of yes and number of no's. Also, just to clarify, was the maker of the motion, was that based on what is numbers in our budget or the numbers that the agencies requested in their grant requests?
The term I used was in our budget.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yeses and 1 no. It appears the motion has passed. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
We just discussed 0.001% of our budget.
I realize that.
So Kevin, just a clarifying question. So does that mean, because if we approve the budget with this on this, the checks automatically just go out, or how does that process work?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, once it's been reviewed and the budget committee votes on it, yes, and once the budget's adopted, then we would send those checks out.
Okay, great, thank you.
So it's 8 minutes after 7. Before we go on through the remainder of the agenda, does anyone need a break?
Yes, please.
All right, why don't we take 5 minutes, reconvene at 7, let's call it 7 minutes then, 7:15.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, y'all.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. No bad words.
Go get a trim.
We took a 7-minute break. Oh, you're such a noisy thing.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we noted that Dave Denos was Dave Denos, right?
Yeah.
Jake, Dave Denos did not vote. We don't know if he was abstaining or just not voting.
I see
Kim,
he has voted.
it was Dave Harms.
Oh, Dave Harms. Okay, Dave Harms then.
I was going to say, I'm actively participating.
I thought you were, Dave. I saw Dave and I just assumed, Jake was saying Dave and I just assumed it was Dave Harms because, I'm council, I'm so used to that.
I do not
Or
see
not.
that he voted.
Yeah.
Did you hear my name?
Yes, you did.
If you voted on that last motion or if you abstained.
I did vote.
So he may have cleared his vote already.
I saw his vote. He voted.
Do I need to again?
No, just tell me what you voted.
Yay.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Unless my button's not working. Which I've had bad electronics today, so maybe it's not working. I don't know.
Or we didn't see it, Dave. We might have just, I didn't see it.
Dave, can you try it, please? Because I was watching the whole time and I never saw it pop up. Okay.
Yep, there it goes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Are we supposed to leave them on there? I see there's some other check marks still on there. Are we supposed to leave them on?
Janelle will clear those.
Okay.
No, you can take them down. Oh, Janelle, yeah, I don't need them once I got them.
But
Okay.
why don't you go ahead and leave them up until we clear the whole group, just to make sure that we've got it all.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Dave, are you guys working full crews?
Was that?
Are you guys working full crews?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fairly busy right now.
Well, that's good.
People seem to be buying lots of things. Lots of things are shipped on lots of pallets. I'm just hoping the outbound stays the same.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Well, I have a quarter after the hour. Shall we resume our meeting? We're back in session. Will our budget officer be presenting this fuel tax discussion, or will that be
Me.
That would be a combination of the mayor and our city attorney.
Okay.
Let me kick it off. This has been kind of stirring behind my mind for almost a year now, but a couple of months ago, I presented this discussion to the city council regarding the fuel tax. And I'll go into why I did that in a minute, but the goal there was to get it on a resolution and approved in time to get on the ballot this fall. And crucial to that is getting community input to the hearing process, which I'm getting concerned about. But it's like the purpose of this discussion right now is to get your input on whether or not you actually support our going forward with this from the city council. And here's the background is this. If you look at the cities within Lynn County and in many cases throughout the state and look at the condition of the roads, you start with Albany, go down 3rd Street, for example, and you've heard all the horror stories coming from Albany City Council about road issues and how they fund it and can't fund it. Go down through Harrisburg city streets, go into Mill City, Lyons, even Lebanon and Sweet Home to a degree, even though I haven't driven a lot of those. The issue is they've all got road problems, road maintenance related issues with the inability to really fund them, because most communities, by the time they get through paying for emergency services, i.e. fire and law enforcement, the bulk of their property taxes are consumed, and just that. Okay, so that leaves you with the state revenue, sharing state revenue sharing, and we get $200,000 roughly a year in Millersburg for road repair. And that will get us by kind of barely. We began our road repair process 2 years ago. We're into our third year now, and we need to continue that, and that will kind of grow over time, and it will never ease up. Meanwhile, we got over $4 million in the queue for projects. We have a $2 million, that doesn't count the $2 million bridge down by Talking Waters, and on and on and on. So my personal thought is, I don't want to become those other cities. I don't see any other way to do it other than a fuel tax. However, nobody in Lynn County has a fuel tax. There's only 38 cities in the state that have a fuel tax, if I remember correctly. So I would like to entertain that. So we have 4 fuel dispensaries in Millersburg. If we take the data from ODOT for last year, without getting into a lot of detail, that's about a $410,000 revenue source for us at 3 cents per gallon. That's to include diesel and gas. Okay, so my concern is over time, unless we do in fact increase our urban growth boundary, road frontage fees, SDCs are going to begin to slide downward because our growth is going to start slowing down. We're running out of major construction areas currently that's available to us. So road costs will continue to go up. We have a lot of unfunded projects that we want to do, for which we have to rely upon either grants, road funding fees, and so forth. It'll take a while to get there. I would like to be proactive and hopefully smart in getting a revenue source that helps us maintain our roads long term. So that's the question. Rough numbers: 410,000 based upon last year's consumption, $200,000 in our budget. I'm sorry, that we get for past due currently. First, we have some money in the queue as well. But I just think to be proactive and keep our roads good, we need to do something beyond what we're currently doing. So that's the suggestion in a nutshell. I would like budget committee input on this discussion prior to developing a resolution and going out in that process and getting community input as well. I don't want to go too far down this road without getting community input. Comments, please.
I agree with the community input, but I'm pretty much sold out already. So,
Mayor, we do have information on an additional slide if you'd like for us to review that before, and if the chair would like that before questions.
Yeah, go ahead. If you have it, go. Oh, this is in front of me now? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, this is what we reviewed, I think, a couple of months ago. Yeah, concern being we need to be done with this review process in June or July, June ideally, to get everything in order to get to the county by August 14th. So no later than July meeting, obviously. So this means we need to be pretty active in May and June with the community, having discussions, getting feedback, or either that or put it off or not do it.
Yeah, no, Jim, I think this is absolutely great. I mean, if anybody wants to obviously look at roads, I mean, just go to Albany, right? So, I mean, they're just behind the curve trying to fix a lot of the roads that they have. So get in front of it. I mean, we should absolutely look at that. In our general fund dollars in the past, we've been able to kind of do that, but obviously with new services we're providing as we grow as a city, we kind of eats into a lot of that general fund dollars, and the fact we don't have any more taxing room in that without going back to the voters. So.
Darren's awful quiet.
Yeah.
So I do have a few comments. Number one, obviously, I'm pretty passionate about funding roads and road maintenance, and I think it's it would be a great thing if the city of Millersburg could pass it. But I did want to mention, and I think I mentioned this to Janelle and Kevin, you will have to negotiate some sort of a deal with probably with ODOT to collect that tax, and they'll want a piece of the action in exchange for doing that. So it'd be good to try to get an estimate of that before you go out to the voters so that you can answer those questions. And I would say, hope for the best and plan for the worst. Gas taxes in local communities, have a pretty rough record in terms of being able to get passed. And so, it would be great you might be able to do it. Millersburg's a unique community. It might pass.
So Darren, would you recommend pursuing a tax on all fuel or just diesel?
I don't think you should isolate a specific type of fuel. I would do all motor vehicle fuel that you can legally put a tax on. That way, I don't know. It would be easier to administer as well, I think, and it would be fair. Why would you want to charge somebody with a diesel Volkswagen Jetta 3 cents a gallon, but you're not charging somebody with a Toyota Camry? So
Okay,
doesn't make sense.
all right.
I will point out we do have, as you see the bottom bullet there, that it can either be administered by ODOT, that would be our preferred, or self-administered by city. And I would just point out there are 28 cities currently, and every city that is on the I-5 corridor, and I have a feeling it's probably because of the numbers and amount, have ODOT. So we have the information from a league report. I'm sure we could find out from those cities what the state's charging for administering their program. I think it's pretty telling that everyone that's on the I-5 corridor is having ODOT administer it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other thing I was going to point out is you got to also bear in mind that 1% of that is dedicated for bike and ped projects, which, because you're a city, it's easy to find bike and ped related projects. And I think that typically you're going to see the opposition from the fuel sales folks. And so at least in Millersburg, you don't have a conglomeration, unless you get people from Albany coming over opposing it on the basis that if it happens here, it's sort of the slippery slope theory, but it'd be interesting to see who comes out to oppose it. Right now, fuel prices are at a pretty big low. And so if you were going to try to get this through, now would be the time. So,
yeah.
That's a great point. I was thinking about that earlier today. That's a great point.
This is the third meeting we have had it on an agenda for discussion, and you can see how many people how much public we have signing in today for it.
We actually had a very outspoken community member who we all know suggest we do this a couple of years ago when we were just finishing up the Lowe's truck shop project, whatever, that we got a pretty loud statement, not loud, I'm sorry, a suggestive statement that we actually pursue this. So I've been debating going back to that guy and ask for his help communicating it. But so anyway.
This is something we talked about during planning commission meetings when the truck stop was going in that a number of us felt were pretty important. We're funneling some of our funds from the city into possibly things that are generated from the truck stop, that maybe that money could go elsewhere and the truck stop could pay for its own issues. We're adding truck traffic on both ends of town. I think this is important.
What irritates me is the amount of food containers with Lowe's on it along our highway at the full distance.
Well, we do have some work to do on our cleanup days, don't we?
All right. So any other comment?
Yeah, just one comment, and that is you probably ought to, I just think as a matter of courtesy, allocate about 50% of whatever you collect to the county.
I knew that was coming too.
I was waiting for that comment because, and I appreciate your comment, Aaron, but I think something we need to remember, a lot of people don't realize that Millersburg, and Kevin taught me this, Millersburg is the third highest contributor to taxes to Lynn County. Our tax base, or our tax, assessed tax value is the third highest in the county. And we do a lot of work here to take care of our businesses and their residences, which helps bolster that base, which brings more and more tax revenue in for Lynn County. So, Darren, we thank you.
Well, and I would also add that none of that money goes to the road department.
So you do have a heck of a bank. Where do you get your funding from?
I think there's a factor in his background.
I notice the sheriff's office and everybody's always borrowing money from the road department. You must have a bank someplace.
Well, it's been years of trying not to spend all the money that we got during the good times with the federal forest revenues. And it's not as good today as it was 20 years ago, but we're
But
doing
I
the
think,
best we can.
but I have said this for 10 years I lived here. Lynn County has some awesome roads. The quality of the roads in this county is just really awesome compared to most counties in this state. So you guys do a good job there, but I just don't want to get behind the 8 ball in the city like the other cities are. And now's the time to do something proactive to prevent that.
Well, it's a pretty much accepted fact that it's cheaper to maintain your roads than it is to repair them after they fail.
Yeah.
That's basic pavement management.
So Chairman, I will take this as an agreement to move forward with development of a draft resolution.
A couple folks have some questions still out there, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Councilman Sullivan, I saw your hand was raised.
Yeah, it was. Jim, I support you on this. I think it's a good opportunity to not put it on the backs of the Millersburg residents and to let the people pay for some of the road repairs that are utilizing our roads and our heavy vehicles on them. So I support you on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Reed, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, a couple things we're going to have to do that you'll need to give me direction to do is whether you want us also to go out in the same resolution to tax propane and electricity. Now, in my conversations with ODOT, they're telling me no city does it this time. We can always do that in the future if we want. My concern is if we put it on there, is it going to cause some voter confusion? I don't know. But there will become a time when electricity will be sold at locations, and the way they're anticipating it doing is how many kilowatt hours converts over to a gallon of gasoline, and that's the way they will tax that, as well as with propane. So as we get to the point of creating a resolution, and maybe you want to get comment from this committee as to whether they would consider also doing propane and electricity or not.
Thank you. Comments?
I'd say that'd be such a small number of vehicles, it's not even worth messing with, making it messier. That's my vote.
Well, and I would disagree that they're still using the same pavement as everyone else is, so why not contribute their share?
But is it going to make it more complicated? Is that what Forrest is saying?
I don't know if it will. I was just wondering if it will, or will it take some of the heat off?
I think you could look into it and determine what the regulatory issues are around that and the complications of implementing that. It may be a moot point if there's no vehicle charging stations or vehicle propane stations currently in the city, but you would be poised for something in the future.
And that's that you're correct, Darren, is because right now it's not being taxed. ODOT does not tax propane or electricity. This would be setting it up for the future, if that's something you folks wanted to consider.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And this is probably a question for Forrest on how, but if we're going to look at that, I think we need to look beyond just propane and electricity, because there's a lot of research and work being taken place at national labs right now on hydrogen fuel cells and hydrogen fueled vehicles. They're starting to put stations in now. So if we're to do it, I think you need to have something that could be encompassing for anything that could be used, would be used for a vehicle fuel source.
And and perhaps what I could do is I can make a definition of motor fuel in the resolution, which would encompass anything, which would, provide fuel to the car that causes the car to move, something with some better language in that bill.
One thing I would caution though, and this goes back to, I think, what some others mentioned about the confusion. If you're not careful, you could create an opportunity for an opponent to scare people into thinking that their electric bill is going to get charged extra for this gas tax because they may or may not have an electric vehicle in their house. And so it may be something where you don't do the other fuels now, and then later on you add it in, and all the people with traditional fueled vehicles or fossil fueled vehicles will vote to include those other guys that are skating. So you never know. how
Yeah.
people look at it.
I
Strategy.
agree with Darren and Dave on this. I would just keep it simple personally.
Yeah, I do that too. I keep it simple. I mean, one of the big things is how they're going to tax electric vehicles. I know there's a lot of competitions and test pilot programs going on. I know they're starting to even look at possibly taxing even gasoline cars per mile versus per gallon. There's a program through the state doing that now because that's going over to electric vehicles. So it's kind of, to me, it's kind of hard how you're even going to tax that when we haven't got a good determination yet of how the state's even going to do that. So I'd leave it off for now. But.
That was exactly my point. Is that no one has the answer to those questions yet. So you put it on there if someone asks those questions, no one has a direct answer. So it hasn't been done yet. So to me, it's again one of the things where it just messes it up for right now.
Great discussion.
Thank you, folks. So I guess what I'm hearing is that just consider diesel and gasoline going forward.
That's the consensus.
Pardon me,
I think
Mr.
that was a consensus.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Barry, you're awful quiet. Where's your head?
No, I said I think that was smart to just keep it in the first two fuels, because down the road they're gonna have all kinds of things coming up. The electric, the hydrogen, all this is gonna come down the road though, not
But
today.
Barry, do you support the concept of the fuel tax though?
Yeah, I think we should keep our roads up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm certainly in favor of just going with the fossil fuels, the diesel and the gasoline. I think it's going to be easier to sell to our residents, and the majority of that money is coming from diesel fuel, which is out of town trucks. Right.
Right. Correct.
And just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just add one more thing.
No problem.
Just for all of you folks, as we go forward, you can see on this list, and I think on the previous page we had it listed. So when you get questioned about it, it's about 4-to-1 or 3-to-1. You can see 3 to diesel and 1 to gasoline going forward. So that's a good number to recollect.
Help people.
We were actually.
That'll be our sales pitch.
I'm sorry. We were actually approached, I think Kevin was approached about somebody wanting to bring in yet one more gas station in the center of Camillus, not too far from City Hall. That may or may not ever happen, but if it did, that's just, we could get yet another gas station in town before it's over.
Very good.
Okay, I think we have enough to move forward. Thank you. Okay, Forrest, you okay?
I am. Yeah, that's good. Mr. Mayor, I guess what do you want me then to develop a resolution, and we want to, are you going to gain community conversation, and do you want to shoot for a June meeting to approve the resolution or the July meeting?
I'd like to, it depends on what goes on with this pandemic, but okay. I would love to have it in June if at all possible.
Okay.
And I look for your and Kevin's guidance here in terms of timing. We have another reason for a hearing in June as well. I forget what it was, but it's out there. So June is becoming an important month. So yeah, I would like to work between now and through the month of May to get this kind of fine-tuned where we want it. Maybe have a rough draft for our May meeting to talk about.
Sure. I can have a rough draft for you in May. That's no problem for the resolution. All we'll need to do is just pass the resolution, and then I need to just go through some ballot issues. And then just to let you know that if for some reason you guys get an idea that this is just not a good situation, we can withdraw the ballot title up until September 3rd.
Okay. I forwarded to Kevin, I think yesterday, a draft resolution for the League of Working Cities.
Yes, and I've seen that. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Good.
And I've got that.
Okay.
Okay. Good. And is there any need? Do you folks need me on here any longer, or do you want me to remain on, or Kevin? I'll be available if you need. You just text me and I'll get back on.
I don't see a need at this point for it.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Next item, Mr. Kreitman.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll try to go through these slides on the water and sewer rates fairly quickly because there's a few here, but we have discussed this before. It may be new to the budget committee, so I just want to give a little background. It's pertinent to the budget discussion because we're going to look at our water and sewer funds and how they are funded and what we're looking at coming up. So we have, if you're not aware, we've been in the midst of a water and sewer rate structure evaluation, and we're getting near the end of that. We actually started, we're evaluating rates and system development charges because we have new master plans. The last rate increases were in 2012 for water and 2015 for sewer, so it's been some time. We're proposing some changes to the rate structures, which I'm not going to go over unless you have specific questions that you want to discuss. But the reason is because we need rate increases to meet our projected capital and operating expenses. So the intent would be to do this rate structure change and then start doing rate increases after that, and then smooth those increases over multiple years. I took some of these slides from our consultant who gave a presentation a little while ago, so they might look familiar, but just in general, this is kind of an overview of how we look at financial forecasting for these funds. We want to look at our annual cash flow projections over 5 to 10 years and then identify the overall revenue increases needed. So our sources of funds are our budget balance, our service charges or rates, our system development charges, which we'll talk a bit more about later, and then any miscellaneous fees. We have operating expenses, capital financing, and other requirements, including capital reserves. So for our reserves, we need to build in cash reserves to our utility for 6 months of operating contingency and future projects, future plant improvements for our water and wastewater plants, other projects. These are all the projects that are listed in our capital improvements plan, which we'll be going over in a little bit. So right now, these slides were from several months ago when our consultant put them together, but our water fund forecast, and there's a lot of stuff here, I'm not going to try to explain it all, but this blue line right here is our ending fund balance projected. This would be our reserves over time. So if we do nothing and we stay with the same rates we've got, we look like by next year we start to really use up those reserves to pay our costs. And a lot of those are our contract with Albany is our day-to-day operating expenses. Our debt services are our loans for the wastewater plants, those sorts of things. And then we have some capital projects. So if our rate revenues stay pretty constant, meaning we only increase maybe just a very little bit over that time, we're going to quickly deplete the funds. And sewer actually looks even worse. It's a similar graph, whereas by this year, we start to really drop off. And that's part of that's because we are using our system development charges, as you'll see in the budget, to pay down our debt on the plants, which we are allowed to do. But if we use those all up, then we have to start paying that out of our operating revenues. So this is just a slide that we put together when we did our sewer rate increase earlier this year, just to show, this is sewer only, not water, but over the years, starting back in 97, yeah, our percent increases were pretty low, or sorry, were pretty high at times. And then for many years, we did a 7.2% increase every year, and then we stopped and didn't do anything until 2015. There was a 10% increase, and the intent was to do one and maybe a second additional increase, 15 and 17, but that didn't happen. So now we're in 2020, and we have not increased our rates for some time. So that's why we're in this situation now of needing to do that, and which is why council passed a rate increase, the first rate increase of 7.5% that was recommended in just the sewer fund to at least keep us on track and start to rebuild some of that. So the proposed rate changes structure, I said I wasn't going to get into this, and I really won't very much, but we're going to change our water. It's proposed to change the water rate structure to a uniform block structure, meaning you pay the same amount per gallon for every gallon of water you use. And then have inflationary rate increases around 3% beginning next fiscal year. We're looking at changing from a fixed charge. All of you who live in Millersburg know that your sewer rate is a flat rate right now. So it would be changing to a volumetric, consumption-based structure. And we've heard from residents who use less water, have fewer people in their household, that they would really like to see this happen. And then some rate increases to try to catch up in those funds. So
Janelle,
one reason, sorry, go ahead.
do you want questions now, or do you want us to wait?
I think this is my last. We'll need to do this part real quick, and then any questions. We also have some slides of frequently asked questions that we put together. I wasn't planning on showing them, but if you want to see them, we can. So we were on a timeline path to adopt this, but when we got to March 2020, we were supposed, or this past March, we were supposed to have public outreach via a town hall or open house. And that is when the COVID situation that hit, we weren't able to do that. So everything was put on hold. And then we were going to be looking at adopting the overall rate structure plan in June. So all of this is pushed back to some amount, but what we'd like to have input tonight on is, because this impacts the budget, not this year's budget so much, but going forward, what the consensus is on how long we put this on hold, or should we move forward with some other, with a virtual, some other public outreach. We'll definitely still do public outreach, but doing it in some other format besides a physical town hall meeting. So, yeah, we can definitely do some questions. That's all the slides I had on this. So,
can you go back up to previous slide, please?
This one?
Next. So if you switch to a uniform block structure, will there still be a base charge in the water rate to account for the fact that even if you don't use any water, you're still the cost of providing that standby service to you?
Yes, there definitely will. And like I said, I can pull up more information if you want to see it. But at this point, yes, there will still be a base charge in both water and sewer. And council spent quite a while actually on the water base charge and what proportion that should be compared to the fixed charge versus the variable charge. So I think actually the new proposed structure would shift more of the cost to the fixed side on water, and more of the and on sewer it does the opposite. So there's also a strategy here with implementing the water and sewer rate structure changes at the same time, because they help offset each other for a given household. So a low water user will pay more in their fixed water rate charge, but they'll pay less in their sewer charge because now it's based on the water they use. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that sounds good. Although you probably don't want to incentivize high usage of water, if it's we're in a situation we want to conserve.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what we're doing now. Actually, right now we have a declining block structure, which means the more water you use, the less you pay. Well, beyond a certain point, at a certain threshold, you pay a lower rate, and that dates back to
Pacific Power.
Yeah, when Pacific Power owned the system and they wanted to sell water. So the only other, I believe, if I'm remembering the information correctly from when we went over this months ago, Albany is one of the only other communities, maybe the only other one, that has a decline.
London,
because they also had the same origin of their water system. So the farther step would be going to an inclining block where you pay more per water use, but we didn't feel like that was a little more extreme, and going just to the uniform would be a good medium. If that's where I believe council landed, and that is the option that we've been moving forward with.
Yeah, I think that was Janelle. It was the idea that it was kind of interesting when we went into the water, is that it really doesn't, as much as we run that plant, the more water that we use out of that plant, our costs really don't go up much. So whether they run 3 million, whatever they call them per day, up to 12, the cost is very insignificant how much the cost to operate that is. But again, you don't want to incentivize people to use more water, because once we run to the max capacity of that plant, we have to build more, right? So and the cost is higher. So
yeah, and totally agree. And just for this group, the reason to bring this up here now is to get direction on how we move forward and how quickly we move forward, because this does affect budget. But so we will have more meetings, public meetings, with more information on what the change actually is. But for tonight, we just wanted to make you aware of this. And if you want to provide some direction now, or want to see how the rest of the budget is and then provide that direction later, that's fine. But at this point, it's just kind of on hold, and we're trying to make a plan for how to move forward.
Our hope was to, looking at where we are, I think it'll probably be June before we look at being able to have public outreach. And we were initially looking at to go, provide public outreach, then the following month do it. So we could condense the stuff if we do open up on June, where we can do the public outreach in town halls, some sort, and then try to get something July, August, public hearing and adoption. If we could probably still do things and try to get something done in September, we would probably be okay with that. We just kind of wanted to get some feedback from the others.
And something I should have clarified, all of this work that our consultant has put into it and developing the structure, there's a financial model she's used, and that was based on the numbers in the last 5 years. So our preference would be to, even if there was a desire to defer a rate increase, be to go ahead and adopt a plan at some point moving forward. Because if we wait and we don't do anything with this, we just put it on hold for a year, then a lot of that work ends up needing to be redone. And we don't want to lose that work that has been done to date.
Councilman Cowan, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I know we've been working on this for a while, and I understand with the situation with COVID has derailed a little bit of our time frame, but I would encourage that we move, continue to move forward. We don't know how long potentially the restrictions will be. So I would encourage that we do some public outreach, maybe through this type of meeting or through our website. But I do feel we need to continue to be moving forward in a swift manner.
Okay. Mr. Holsworth, I see your hand was raised.
You bet. I think that we ought to move forward because we've got a lot invested time-wise, and Janelle and the crew have put a lot of time into figuring this all out for our future. So I think we got to move forward with it.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Sullivan.
I agree with Councilor Cowan and Mr. Holsworth.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Councilman McPhee.
Yeah, I say that we move forward to as fast as we can. Like something like this, maybe do the public outreach. I mean, the longer that we wait, the further in the hole that we are. So, so I say we get that kicked off as soon as we can.
Well, Kevin, it looks like you have quite a bit of support. Do you need that in the form of a motion?
I don't think so. We just want to get some clarification from a cross section if they're comfortable with us moving forward and doing some other public outreach things. And we have some other options, some direct mailing stuff. And if it gets to where we can't do an actual town hall or something, we can always look at posting something virtually for questions and things like that. But we want to see how important it's a pretty big topic, and we want to see if what community members felt as far as if we have to moving forward and doing this, if it had to be done all virtually with some other things done in lieu of that.
Well, it is 2020, and we were supposed to be having flying cars by now, so we, by golly, should be able to get our sewer and water rates right.
Yeah.
How do you tax that fuel?
And I also should have clarified, and I can talk about this more later. Our system development charges are separate from this, and they are moving forward to be up. Okay. Thank you.
I still see some hands raised on the graph here. Are those actual questions or just haven't taken them down?
I had mine up and took it down. I support it totally, but I want to keep this thing in motion, get it done. So I keep forgetting where we are on it, being an old guy. I keep losing continuity in my head.
Don't feel bad. We have the same problem.
I think that's why Janelle asked to keep moving it forward.
Ready, set, go.
But yes. Next item, strategic plan overview.
All right, we just wanted to do a quick overview. We're not going over the strategic plan. We will do another update this year to it. We have tried to set every 2 years, so you'll see an update, and we'll be getting with council to do that. And so next year you see it. But just want to do a quick reminder of our mission and vision. Our mission, partnering with business and industry to maintain a small town atmosphere, and our vision, as you can see there. I don't need to read it to you, but mainly just want to remind everyone that our strategic plan really is the basis where we start our budgeting process from. So if you want to go to the next slide. Values, this is something we adopted. So we have, council adopted 6 values last year. So you can see it's in a circular form: community, trust and integrity, commitment to service, continued fiscal responsibility, collaboration, continuous improvement, communication. And then we just kind of highlighted the 2 that we feel are probably the most important: community trust and integrity, and continued fiscal responsibility. If you, just as a reminder, what we did with those on that. The next slide. So these were the strategic priorities that are in, and you'll see these referenced in some of the documents when we get into the budget. So priority 1, community governance. Our priority 2 is safety, development. So that's development of residential, commercial, industrial properties. Public infrastructure, ensuring our infrastructure is designed, constructed, and maintained to meet our current and future needs. Recreation, and then environmental stewardship, and looking at promoting sustainability through efficient management of our natural resources. And we just wanted to kind of hit that as we get into the capital improvements program. So we look at what we look at for our budget is we look at our strategic plan, then we look at our master plans that we have and our capital improvements plan, and that's really kind of those things and direction for council that we begin the development of our budget with. So unless there's any questions on that, I just wanted to hit that real quickly. And if, Mr. Chair, if you're so inclined, we can move to capital improvements program, which will be Janelle.
Are there any questions or concerns from the group? Onward, Kevin.
Okay.
All right, this is kind of a review. We went over this slide last year. Our CIP is a planning document. It identifies the capital projects in the next 5-year horizon. It's got 6 sections, which are parks, public facilities, transportation, stormwater, wastewater, and water. And you will see those all in the budget as well. So funding can come from a variety of sources, including system development charges for eligible projects. We'll talk about that a little more. So this is what you'll see in the CIP document, which you have, and I will pull it up just to show you a couple things, but we don't necessarily need to go through that whole document page by page anymore to save time. But these are the totals over the next 5 years in each category that are shown in the CIP. One thing I'll note is parks. Last year we had nothing in here for parks because we were developing the Parks Master Plan. It was just adopted by council. And so what you're seeing in here now are the projects from the project list in that master plan. And there are some, there's quite a bit of money going toward parks that probably wasn't planned out that way in the past. I would say focus on this year's for now, because once the Parks Commission gets established, then they'll be helping give input to the CIP. But for the moment, I just put all the projects from the master plan in it as a starting point. I'm going to show you something real quick if I can. If I can figure out how to get it onto the screen. So this is the CIP document, which you've all received. I was just going to show you something new this year is a sheet at the end of each section that talks about funding from SDCs. And this is sorry, I gotta get down to the section that has it. It's for the funds that have system development charges, which is streets, water, sewer, and park, or not park, streets, water, and sewer. We have these funds available. Well, parks are available too, I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. I opened the wrong document. It's where this blank sheet is. You can't see it. Yeah, just a second. Well, we might just skip that now. Well, it's frozen again. Oh, there we go. I got it back. Hang on.
While we wait for Janelle, can I ask everyone to mute their microphone to reduce feedback?
All right. This version is where they're at. Okay, so for parks, for example, we are tracking our system development charges over time. And what you see in the budget, and you'll see in this year's budget looks a little different, is the SDC balance, if this is for the end of 18-19, is here, the 556 through 18. But that is split into two components, and those two components have restrictions on how they can be used. So we really have to track each of these two components, which are the reimbursement and improvement amounts, SDCRs and SDCIs. We have to track them separately, and then we can add them up for a total, but and use them separately. So going forward, we'll be tracking them that way in the budget, and so you'll see that. But we have this year's, we know our beginning of the year balance. We estimate, we know what we've received to date. We estimate what we'll receive the rest of the year, and then we know what we have planned to spend. So we projected next year's, this year's end of year balance, next year's beginning of year balance, and then the projections for next year are what you'll see in the budget. So that was a really quick overview of that. Are there any questions?
If there are any questions, you'll have to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Does not appear there's any questions.
Okay, great.
I have a question on the park budget, if I could. It just says park, says new park property acquisition, 350,000. Do we know where that park's located, or has that been identified? Is that the splash pad we've all wanted?
That would be for property in the northwest section of town for a future park.
In the parks master plan, which I didn't include in this presentation at all, it identifies some general areas of where two parks in that part of town could be. So there's the possibility of acquiring some property up there this coming year, so we included it in the budget in case that took place.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Janelle.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, that moves us to our budget. And the first thing is the budget message. And in light of where we are, I was not going to go in depth. If anyone has questions on the budget message, hopefully everyone had a chance to read it. I'm more than happy to discuss those or answer any questions. I will just point out one thing, that's two things in the budget message that I just really want to highlight. And the first one is I want to thank our budget committee last year. Had you not taken the action you did in allowing us to look at upgrades to some facility things here in City Hall with regards to high-speed fiber and our phone system and stuff, we would not be meeting this way right now, and we would be scrambling trying to figure out how we were going to meet Oregon law conflict because of our budget. We may have been having meetings in the park or something with trying to maintain social distancing and other things. So thank you for providing the funding that's allowed us to have our meeting remotely and do that. And then I just want to point out that I want to thank our staff. This last few months has been a challenge, but I just wanted to thank the staff for their dedication, commitment to our mission, vision, and values. And these principles have never stood out more than over the past few months as we address coronavirus, in addition to their everyday responsibilities. It's greatly appreciated. And I don't think most of the public hopefully doesn't see this, but our workload, I would say probably just, we have never been lacking workload. And I would say we've probably gone up a good 3rd or 25% with having to do online meetings. And I don't think a lot of people are probably aware of the amount of preparation that takes to do the virtual meetings. So I just wanted to thank all of them, everyone for that. So is there any questions on the budget message?
Well said. I liked it. It's good.
Right. So with that, then we will just
You want to go over the calendar?
we'll look at moving to the calendar. And Jake, you want to just go over the calendar with them?
Absolutely. So as far as the calendar goes, there's no major changes as to what was published, I think, last month when I first let you guys know when the dates were going to be. We do plan on having another budget meeting on May 5th, next week. And during that meeting, we'll need to have a public hearing for state shared revenue. So we'll open that up for a public hearing next week. And then after that, it just goes to City Council for the adoption of the budget. So no other changes as of right now.
All right.
Quick question, is that, I don't recall doing a public hearing on shared revenue before, am I correct? Am I accurate with that?
It is a requirement. And we did it last year during a budget hearing and then again at the City Council. You have to do it twice.
So we did it at our second budget hearing last year and at council.
So what if the budget gets approved tonight? What happens?
We would still have to have a public hearing.
Okay.
And one of the things that we ran into with everything with COVID, trying to get everything up and operating on it. So that's where we're at on. So we would still need to come back and have that portion of it. So we could have just a real short meeting. All right, unless there's other questions, we just go in and we do a quick overview of our trends in history on it. Again, the city about 4.52 square miles, about a mile wide in an east-west direction, 3.5 miles. Our population this year, as you saw in the other report, we're now at 2,655. We have an employment population of about 3,500. I think it's still clear that we're still a dominant factor of economy. Our areas, you'll see in additional slides, we're still seeing pretty much an equal division between industrial and residential properties. Just a short history here of where we are, how we got here as a city on it. So some current trends, what draws people to Millersburg, our largest lot size, easy access to I-5, the rural fill. What's changing as a result of recent population growth? We're seeing change in demographics from primary industrial and farming to increased residential. With that, we see changing priorities. We are going to see, as I mentioned in the budget message, we expect to see a slowing in population growth, primarily related to the availability of buildable land. Increased need for city services. We're seeing a lot more requests for services of people moving in, and an increased need and desire for regulation. So this is our population. So the blue is PSU, who does in off non-census years is responsible for doing the population. And then you can see the US Census. So it'll be interesting to see where we're at. So you can see we've maintained a fairly tight curve. And again, just due to the availability of land, we expect to see that begin to flatten after this year. Again, city trends and assessed value. So at the peak, just prior to the closing of the IP mill, so in 2008, you can see we hit 500 million in assessed value. That was also one of our peak years in electric franchise fees. When the mill closed, we lost about $1 million a year, if I remember correctly, in electrical franchise fees. And that subsequently, that loss in franchise fees and then in assessed value is what prompted the city to actually, it was 2008 or 2009 where the city first, or maybe it was, I think it was actually later than that, first started to assess any tax on it. So you can see where we're at. We were at 566 million right at this year in assessed value. And if you, as the mayor mentioned earlier, of the cities in Lincoln County, we have the third highest assessed value. So it's Albany, Lebanon, then us. I believe Sweet Home is after us, which is a much larger population. So by far, when you look at our assessed value based on per capita, we are way above any similar community here in this county. So here's our assessed value by type again. So we're about a 44% is residential and about 55% of our total assessed value is in commercial and industrial. Here's again our taxes for 1920. So you can see our rate, the city's rate is 3.5, Lincoln County is 4.293.6. Lynn Benton Education Service District is right at 30 cents. Greater Albany Public Schools, 6.82. Lynn Benton, 67 cents. 4-H is 7 cents. For a total effective rate of 15.679 on there. And you can kind of see where the breakout is there as far as City of Millersburg. So the total tax bill, city represents about 22.34% of it. The total number of water and sewer accounts. So the blue is commercial, industrial, and then the orange is residential. So you can see we're about, probably 10 times, 9 times the residential accounts as our commercial. But if you look at the amount billed, it's about a 50-50 split between who's paying for what. So residential covering about 51% and industry, commercial is paying about 49%.
And if you remember last year, industry was over 50% and residential was under. So it's just a reflection of the growth.
Of the growth that we're seeing.
Do you have a slide that shows volume instead of just the number of accounts?
We don't in this presentation. We have that. We have tons of that data from all the rate work that's been done lately, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
No worries. Just curious.
So again, this is our top 10 in assessed value in the city. So Lincoln County made the list when they purchased the IP property. So that was the most recent report. So a portion of the property at some point is considered non-taxable, but there's a portion of it that is not yet. So you can see where ATI is, Wachang, and then Flakeboard, Weyerhaeuser's Distribution Center, Pacific Core, Palm Harbor, Georgia Pacific, and then individual owner, property owner, and veterinary services. And then, so we had one drop, and BNSF Railroad came up as the second as far as what they pay the taxes for property owned in the city. So here is, again, you can see where our year-end fund balances are. So if you can see sewer, you can see, as Janelle talked about, has dropped. And part of that was some major projects, lift stations was a portion of that.
Yes, that is a portion of that.
That came in. And then you can see where we are with water. Our streets are showing an increase. Part of that is the SDCs that we're seeing. But the other thing that, as we mentioned previously, in 2018, we actually realized that our population, something was off with our population. we notified PSU because we were being significantly underreported, which has a lot of our state revenues shares come based on our population. So with us being off in that population, we probably we weren't receiving what we should have in state revenue shares. So, but the majority of that in the streets, I would imagine, is SBC revenue. And then you can see the general fund there on the attached. And that, again, is primarily due to our growth and not only in our assessed value, but also in some of our franchise fees. As you can see here, franchise fees. So you can see Comcast, fairly steep. Pacific Power, you can see we took a dip back in 15, 16. Again, this is really reflective of what's taking place at the time with regards to some of our industry and our residential now with that on there and looking at those. So most of them are maintaining a fairly constant trend. Building permits, so since 13 through 19, so you can see that our building permit activity, the highest was 2018. This year we're projecting to drop down closer to where we were in 2016.
I think this is.
But I think that is right now for 19 is through this time period.
Well, this is calendar year.
Calendar
so
year.
This is complete 2019 data.
Yes. It says fiscal.
Oh, it does. You're right. Jake, I believe this data is actually calendar year. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is by calendar year.
I'll fix that slide next time.
Okay. All right. So that is where we're an overview. And next, is there any questions on any of those slides? All right. Hearing none, we'll move to 2018-19 adopted versus actuals. So as you can see here, for the most part, as far as our budget expenditures and actual expenditures on there with regards to the general fund. So our budgeted revenue, our actual revenue came in, other than sewer, it looks like, and streets. General fund revenue, we came in higher. And the biggest reason for that, and you'll see that again this year, is this last year, our assessed value increase was 9.6%. We're figuring a 4% rate increase in our assessed value, and then also a collection ratio of 96%, I believe, based on what we get from the county. So we will probably beat that 4% this year on it. But you can see that our budgeted and actual revenues were a little off from the other accounts, and some of that was due to SDCs on some of those accounts. I would imagine. Janelle, feel free to jump in there.
Yeah, we're pretty close on stormwater, sewer, and water. I'd have to look for the exact reasons why, but some of those are, yeah, they're probably the way revenue came in at the end of the fiscal year or the transition from fiscal years. That could be what's going on the streets as well.
And then if you look at 18-19 budget versus actual, all of the accounts we came in under budgeted expenditures for those accounts. So those funds carried over. All right, next slide. So this is our proposed to adopt it. So you can see currently our adopted 2019 and our proposed 2021 budget comparisons. So you can see general fund is about 700,000 higher. The biggest portion of that you'll see in emergency services. There's when we get into the budget, you'll see that we've got about $1 million for the beginning of the design and construction of the new fire station. And if you can see, most of the other areas we are lower. So general fund administration drop of about 400,000, about 150,000 on building. Just a reminder, building is a pass-through fund. We do keep a small portion of that, but most of that is a revenue in, revenue out. That includes our building permit fees and the school excise tax that comes out of that budget. Celebration, again, We're still not sure, but it's likely going to be a reduced, if we are able to do something, we'll be at a reduced level. So you'll see funding down for that. And now I'll let Janelle talk about the street storm and enterprise funds.
So when we get into the actual budget, you'll see why these numbers change. These are very project dependent. So our street fund as a whole for the operation and maintenance side it can be a little bit less. We're proposing a little bit less this year than last year, but we have more projects proposed. And we can fund those projects with the system development charges, which is kind of a different way of breaking it out. Well, we've had it broken out this way last year, but we're showing it a little different this year. Stormwater, again, we're proposing there was a project we proposed last year that we didn't end up doing, and we're actually pushing it off till not this year, this coming year, but the year after. So that's why there's a difference there. Similar in sewer, although I'll have to look in the details of the fund to see why this year is so much higher than last year in operation. But it is because of projects. They're just not SDC funded projects. This is because of the projects at the wastewater plant for solids handling and dewatering. And then in water, it's a similar reasons that we'll get to in the details later.
Any question on this slide? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to the next slide. So this is what our proposed reserve funds look like. So you can see based on we'll get into this again in more detail as we go line item budget. We're showing 388 in Parks SDC. We're showing 2.5 million. So as I mentioned, there's about 1 million showing in for construction this year in emergency services. So we're looking at right now, what we're proposing is we've signed a contract with the architects. We're looking at most likely we'd have a split construction year. So we would see some construction potentially start late spring around this time next year. So we're estimating that we could see up to $1 million. So we have budgeted for the construction of the station at 3.5. When we get to that budget, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that would be the remaining balance in next year. So we put that in a reserve so you can see that now as we talk a little bit about that. And that was, and I explained a little bit of that in the budget message as well. And I'll let Janelle talk about the other funds.
Right. So these reserves are a combination of SDCs and other funds that we have available, and we'll see those in more detail when we get to those budget items. We don't have any reserves in stormwater because that's funded with general fund dollars, so we're not trying to carry a reserve in there.
Any questions on this page? Okay. Right, so we're into, so this is our general fund estimates of available resources. So we're estimating about 1.9 million this year in revenues. We're projecting about 733,000 in carryover from this current fiscal year. And then you can see franchise fees, just hit the big ones here. Franchise fees, about 972,000. Again, I mentioned the building construction fee that goes direct to that account. And then that's an in-out for the most part. And then transfers from the enterprise funds. And this is something I think we're in our third year now of this, where in the past we had not charged our enterprise funds for our staff and equipment and things that are doing that. So we established the formula, and that is based on the formula that our enterprise funds give back to our general fund to cover the costs associated with those operations, their general fund. So we're looking at total general fund revenue of about 4.9 million. So when you look at the next column at the top, proposed expenditures from beginning fund balance and carryover from the previous year. So these would be spending down essentially our beginning fund, general fund, beginning fund balance. So we got 65,000 for parking lot and sidewalk repair here at City Hall and Janelle. And if there's more questions, but one of the things we've realized, we've got some panels that have failed. We also realized, some of you may have noticed on major highways and stuff, you'll see the state out doing a lot of surveying and stuff, and then they're looking at ramps and stuff. And our ADA ramps need some work to make sure that to come into compliance with current standards. So that includes that. So Parks and Rec, fire facility design, the construction, Equipment replacement, that's part of our ongoing contract with Albany, 35,000. Then we established last year an equipment replacement fund on there. Then general fund contingency. We also have contingency in the, I think it's in the, if I remember correctly, in the fire fund. It's about 30,000 on there, and then stormwater projects 39,000. So when you look at those total costs from beginning fund balance, I just point out that the 102, if we don't spend anything out of the equipment replacement fund, and the 630,000 between in contingency, we don't expect to have any costs out of those, and if they don't, those are funds that continue to be moved forward in the next year. So if you look at our total proposed general fund expenditures of 5.8, proposed expenditures from our general fund beginning fund balance carryover is 1.6. So our proposed general fund operating expenditures is 3.6. And one of the things that I mentioned to you before, the biggest reason I have this here is, what we've said is outside of capital, we want to make sure we can maintain our daily operations with our projected revenues. So, if we spent if we had no external spending down our beginning fund balance, you can see our proposed general fund operating expenditures would be 3.6 on that. So we're still bringing in general fund revenues to support our daily operations in the city. And general fund operations contributed to capital beginning fund balance to about 1.27. Any questions on that page?
Kevin, this is David. I have a question.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll cover it later, but on the fire station itself, it looks like correct me if I'm wrong, there's about $1 million carryover from last year. Looks like there's about $1 million in additional expense potentially this year. Can you tell me what that additional expense is, and as well as where those funds are going to be coming from?
Yeah, so the funds are coming from our beginning fund balance that we have set aside for the construction. And I think if you were to look, we're not actually at a million. I think about probably the only thing that's coming out is 3.4. And if you're looking at, and when we get to that budget, and we'll talk about it more when we get into it, but we should be about on track, other than because we have the design and that will come out on it. So if you're looking at our current budget, we're showing the million on our proposed, but I don't see where you're talking about, when you're talking our current budget, are you talking about 2019-20, David, or are you talking in the proposed?
In the proposed.
Yeah, so the proposed is, that's what I was mentioning before. So we're going out to, we have the architect on right now. We're beginning the design. We expect to be ready to go out for bid. We're hoping to go out to bid in early January for the project, and we'd actually would begin construction potentially this time next year or sooner, depending on the weather conditions. So we could see expenditures of about $1 million as that starts. So it's going to be over 2 fiscal years. It'll be over this fiscal year and the following fiscal year. So we're accounting for it now so that you can see, and we're showing that in the facility construction reserve. Now, if you look at the facility construction reserve that we had last year, we were budgeting 2.79, and I talked about it in the budget message. When we did the interviews with the architects, we initially based our number based on numbers that we were told by those in the architects and some that were involved in the construction. We initially based it, I believe, we were right around just under $300 a square foot, maybe a little more, less than that. Talking with the architects, fire station construction bids this year came in at around $350 to $400 a square foot. So they all recommend that we look at adding that, adding to our proposed budget. We're looking at about a 9,000 square foot facility. So we bumped that up. We're hopeful that with what the climate where we are right now, that we may see a better bid environment when we get ready to go to bid with it and those numbers come in. But we're budgeting based on what we heard from, I think we interviewed 4 or 5 firms, and they all were pretty consistent. And they had done stations throughout the state. So that's where you're seeing, if you're talking about the difference between the adopted currently and what we're proposing for next year?
So the total, and we're trying to be conservative too, the total estimated construction costs maybe about 3.5 million. So we've got 1 million in this year and 2.5 in the reserve for the following year. And one other thing that you'll see as we go through the budget, and this may end up changing those numbers a little bit about where the money comes from, is we have some road and utility construction to do associated with the station. But that's not just for the station, that's for other purposes as well. So we can help pay for those parts out of the street, the water, and the sewer funds. So you will see those projects as well associated with the fire station. And that, when it all comes together at the end, that may offset a little bit of the cost from the general fund, but we want to make sure we've set aside plenty at the outset.
And so for the benefit of the budget committee, the station we're actually looking at, if you're familiar with where the sign is, the property that we own across the street, the large field, you'll see there's where the city has a sign up on Old Salem for the sale or lease of our property there. That is actually a cutout for a road to come into that property, and where we're looking at placing the station is on the parcel that you drive by. It looks like it's not being farmed. It's just been mowed and stuff, but a portion of that and extending out a little bit into the field. I think I forget how many acres we're looking at total. I think roughly 4 acres. So that would be including some street frontage coming off of Old Salem Road that Janelle was just talking about with the SDCs and some of the street fund stuff.
So all
Someone
in all,
had
it's about $3.8 million, and that doesn't include the cost of land, right? Because the city already owned that.
We already own the land. If you take in the architectural costs, I think we're figuring it's all together. It's probably about, is it 4.1? I think.
Yeah, but some of that is for those other costs.
Yeah.
So I think, David, you're looking at the 3.5 plus the 315, and yeah, that's correct from what we're showing in the general fund right now.
Okay, thanks. Just a very expensive project.
Yep.
Any other questions on this slide? Okay, Janelle.
All right, so our SDC restricted funds, just a little table that shows where we were at the end of June 2019, and this is per our audit. And then with also, we have to do some calculations in here to track our own. So, and then where we are projected to be by the end of this year. So we're looking at those balances going up a bit this year, and then you'll see in our budget for next year that we're planning to spend some of this. Are there any questions on SDCs?
All right, so that takes us to the line item portion of the budget. And
can I get an alibi on the SDC questions?
A what on the SDC?
Yeah, can you flip back to that previous slide real quick? So is it possible, or have you considered an emergency services system development charge?
Unless something has changed in the state of Oregon's legislature, I'm not aware that we can charge one.
Okay, that's all I was wondering, because if you think about it, with the construction of the fire station and providing those services, if that was eligible for some sort of capital recovery through SDCs, that would be worth looking at. But I have no knowledge whatsoever of that process.
I can tell you, I know when 2008, before I retired from Albany, went to California, it was being discussed in the legislature here. It did not pass. There was a lot of resistance from the home builders groups, but there was a lot of push for that because of the capital costs associated with new growth. It made sense, but it didn't go through. And I know when I got back and when I looked, there hadn't been anything. It was interesting because when I left and went to California, it was also being discussed, and it actually passed in California. So they actually have that ability to do that for services, for both equipment and for facilities. But unfortunately, we don't have that in Oregon at this point.
Yeah, but we are, like we said, we are looking at what things associated with the fire station that aren't part of the station itself that need to go in at this time that we can fund out of those funds. And because it is new infrastructure, we can use our SDCs for streets and sewer and water.
So if everyone is good for time, what I would recommend is maybe based on the time, if you're comfortable, we go through general fund and then maybe we hold the enterprise funds, finish the enterprise funds on the 8th. If that works, we can kind of go through on the 5th, on the 5th, Mr. Chair. But if you're comfortable with this moving forward, we can start with the general fund and then address that. Or is the committee comfortable with moving forward with starting with the general fund?
Any thoughts from the committee? I'm comfortable moving forward.
Okay.
I see a couple green lights popping up, so let's keep moving ahead.
All right, so this is just the fund narrative. This is something we added last year to our budget. So it just talks about the functions and responsibilities. Some of this is out of our plans, strategic plans, and others. So you can see what strategies and stuff we have. So one of the things that's in this year's budget, and it'll be ongoing as well, is council approved this year an update to our website for organizational stability. So we're getting ready to introduce a new platform for our website. I think you'll be pretty impressed once it does. We're looking at rollout on that in August. We'll have some enhanced capabilities as well as people being able to request meeting information and have it sent to them directly when it comes in. It'll also give us the opportunity to send emails out to people, both in an emergency or just general. It's all elect, but it's all a lot more. Should be a lot more user friendly. I mentioned the repair, and where it's a CIP project, you'll see a reference to the CIP, the number, if you wanted to look at those. We're continuing to work on the development of our industrial properties. We did close a couple of weeks ago on sale of 4.5 acres approximately to Pacific Power for construction of a power substation at the, it'll be the northwest corner of our property down almost directly across from where, if you were to draw an extension from Woods out, it'd be the property to the west there in that northwest corner. Finishing the update of our development code. It's mentioned in the other, looking at considering plans and stuff for council decision, deliberation and potential expansion of our UGB in our comprehensive plan. We had approval last year in the budget for our financial utility billing software. Jake and Kim were scheduled to start training this past, it was March, about the time. So again, COVID's put that in. So they're still working on things, but we will need to get them at some point. Hopefully we'll be able to get them at some point back to training. If not, we end up doing it online. But we're hoping to have that online around October of this year. It's going to be a huge improvement. We have spent a lot of times with our current software. It's been one of the things that's taken so long on our utility rates, and the lack of information we can pull out of the current program is just amazing. It's been a nightmare. And then purchase of for parks. Again, the functions and responsibilities. We had this budget for this year. We're carrying over to next year. We did, and then we'll be looking at establishing the Parks Commission. The master plan has been adopted, and we'll be moving forward on the Parks Commission. Any questions on the narrative of that? Okay, the next fund narrative is emergency services. And you can see here we're looking at December 20th to complete the design for the new stations. Looking at January of this coming next year, 21, going to bid, and then looking at March of 21, beginning construction. And as I mentioned, that will continue then into the following budget year if we move forward with it. And I will just say, as we are looking at this, council will have an opportunity, we'll have an opportunity to reevaluate. We'll have the design done, but we're not committed to the expenditure for construction. If we see something change with what's going on with the COVID, we still will have an off-ramp there prior to going out to bid for that, but we'd at least have our design done on that. Any questions on emergency services? Okay. Then in general, the building fund, Lynn County purchased a new software program for permitting, and we've been talking about this, and I think we've had it in the budget now for 3 years. They still don't have it up and operating yet. I'm hoping maybe this year, but every time I think they get ready to do it, something new comes up on it. But it would make, unfortunately, by the time it probably gets up, unless we see expansion of our UGP, it's not going to be as much of a benefit to us. But it is still something that we would like to do because it would help streamline our program here. So we continue to hold out hope that will become available to us. And then as we mentioned last year, we put money aside for equipment replacement, $50,000 for, it's $100,000 total. We put $50,000 for equipment and $50,000 for vehicle replacement in there. That's not tied to that. It could be used. And again, this is funds. This is not a restricted account. We could use it if we needed to in an emergency. Again, the celebration, this is new, as we mentioned earlier, we broke the celebration out. And the main purpose for this is just to make it easier for us to track the ongoing expenses and where they're coming out. And if we should ever get to a point where we had big sponsorships and they were to have funds outside of the last few years, even though we've budgeted $30,000, I think last year the total expense from general fund was about $9,000. They didn't have a profit, so they won't have a beginning fund balance. They wouldn't have unless, but just so we can see get a better idea of where the expenses are and things, and make it easier for us for tracking. I'll let Janelle talk about the enterprise funds.
Okay. So streets, some of the highlights are we are finishing SDC study, and streets are part of that. Upcoming projects, we have surface treatment in the Sweetwater and Morningstar subdivisions. So we started doing crack sealing a couple of years ago, and this will be our first round of surface treatment. As Aaron pointed out earlier, maintenance of your streets is much less expensive than rebuilding them. So we're trying to make sure that we're doing that. Captain Lane repair, this has been actually on the list for a couple of years too. We'd like to get that done. It's a failed concrete pavement area that needs to just be replaced. Woods Road repair and overlay. Woods Road is not planned to be built out to full street section with curbs, gutters, and sidewalks anytime in the near future, but the pavement is in bad shape and is something we want to get taken care of. We've been dealing with potholes and things. So we actually applied for and received a grant that covers the majority of this project. So you'll see that in the CIP. So the funding that the city will provide is actually fairly minimal. Most of it will be paid out of that. Some more crack sealing. We did include some money in the budget this year for a Woods Road shared use path. That is based on actually the budget committee minutes from last year talked about let's start to plan that next year, as well as out of the parks master plan work, the desire for a shared use path along Woods Road. So what's included in this year's budget is not the full anticipated amount of the project. It's the money to start doing some planning and look at right-of-way acquisition because that will be required. So it's just enough money to kind of get started. Good-use strips along Woods Road, north where the road has been reconstructed, we have some work to do in the landscape strip behind the sidewalk. Property development for future roads. This is the city's property that is owned on the west side of the railroad tracks. We want to be prepared to put some infrastructure in there if we have an industry who wants to use that. So some work on that. Fire station and industrial property access road. This is the street component of what we were talking about earlier on the fire station to provide that access, but it's also for all of that industrial property. So, and then thermoplastic stop bars and legends. We had this down for this current fiscal year, I believe, but we ended up, it has been awarded now to a contractor, but the work will take place next summer, or this coming summer. Any questions on streets?
Hey, Janelle, this is Scott. I do.
Yep.
Just looking through the project summary and details for this coming year, as well as the next handful of years that you projected out different projects. And then as well as I dug into the unfunded goals of roads, I didn't see anything about are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I didn't see anything about Millersburg Drive, the intersection of Millersburg Drive going to Old Salem along Morning Star, and potentially the future road that would connect on the backside of Trade Winds going into the Love's Truck Stop, that whole project.
Yep.
And
yeah.
And I guess I know that we've talked about this before. I just see a lot of foot traffic from Millersburg Drive and that short chunk of Morningstar to Old Salem, and it just seems like we need to get at least a sidewalk or something in there because you're walking right out on the road.
Yeah.
So I just didn't see anything there.
That's a great question, Scott. And the reason why it's not on there, that project is planned. It's not designed yet, and we need to have further discussion with our Lynn County road representative about this in the near future. But you will see projects in water and sewer funds for the water and sewer infrastructure in that new road. But for the the county will be building and funding the road work itself. So that's why you don't see it in our project list, although we will have some components of that work to put in the water and sewer infrastructure. But it is planned to take place in the next couple of years. Which is why we have not.
Yeah, I saw.
Which is why we haven't put the pipeline project in there, because we know this is going to take place. Sorry, go ahead, Darren.
No, I was just going to say we're waiting for the gas tax thing to go through, and then we'll work on that.
Yeah, I saw for 2020, it was the 2021-22, the sewer for Morningstar Road and realignment. I'm assuming that was, that's part of that. I guess is that then in sense, I mean, if we're tearing up the road, are we going to then potentially be looking at, well, I guess that's the realignment. That's not necessarily tearing up the road. I thought I saw something about maybe that's under water. I think through the sewer might have had something there. But point is it, I mean, do we know of some dates coming up on that? I mean, are years of, or is it, I get concerned about just seeing a lot of the foot traffic. It is a pretty busy connection point.
So our understanding of the schedule is that there was an original thought that it might be designed starting around this time for construction next year, but we may be a little bit farther out than that, and maybe push back another year just because of the availability of resources, staff, time to do this, and the driver being the development of the property adjacent to that. But Darren, would you like to say anything about that?
It's one of those things where the county, we've got, the road department, we've got a lot going on, and we've got plenty to keep us busy. We really need for, I think, the city and adjacent development to kind of help keep this on the front burner, if that's what you want. I mean, from an operational standpoint, I don't think that it's, super problematic or even mostly problematic. I mean, it functions, and we've had a look at the safety situation out there, and we haven't seen anything that approaches a concerning crash rate when it comes to safety. We've committed to doing the project. We will do the project, but it is one of those things where we're balancing priorities in terms of what to get done. We've got a lot of grant-funded projects right now, and we can't turn that money away. But this is important, and I have talked with Janelle and with Kevin about some ideas about maybe bringing in some additional capacity to help get the design done, at least so you can get the sewer and water infrastructure in place before we start tearing it up for a road. So we'll keep picking away at it and moving ahead.
Yeah, and because the design needs to take place, we've got some work on design. We didn't anticipate any construction in this coming year, but we do definitely want to get that moving.
And the biggest thing is, and we did have, we have had discussions about what to do there. The problem is you can't really do any, if we expend any funds there to do it short term, is most likely it's going to be tore out until we have all the grades and elevations to see where we're going to be at.
So, I mean, there was discussion of maybe a gravel path or something.
And that's yeah, it could be that as simple as that. But you know, we could sidebar. I just need funds in the road even put it out even to 2024.
Yeah.
It's not that late.
Scott, I know you're cutting out. I don't know if you're hearing us, but the reason you don't see anything in our road funds at all is because it's not our road project. It's the county's road project per our agreement with them. So does that help? Looks like Scott's frozen.
Yeah.
I think Scott's frozen. Dennis, I believe you had your hand raised.
Well, mine was really kind of minor compared to that. I was looking at the thermoplastic stop bars and such. There was discussion about removing some stop signs through town. We're not going to have thermoplastic down where the stop signs are gone, like at the end of Terry Lane here, are we?
No, so where we're putting thermoplastic stop bars down is where we have stop bars right now, which is where we have roads that connect to arterials or collectors. Where we've discussed the fact that stop signs are not actually required is within our subdivisions on local streets. And those generally don't have stop bars anyway. They just have the signs.
Okay, that's fine.
I appreciate Dennis bringing that up, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I know there was some discussion about, you know, wholesale stop bars everywhere to try to encourage compliance. And my comments in the past were that that's not, compatible with, engineering practice and design for these types of streets. And I would encourage you not to overuse traffic control devices or use them in a way they weren't intended. So thank you.
Yeah, and although since none of you have seen the actual documents probably for this project, there are no thermoplastic stop bars being shown within the neighborhoods. These are all on our arterials and collectors and at the intersections of those with the other streets.
Perfect, thank you.
Are we ready to move on to the next fund, or are there more street questions?
Okay. Remind everyone, if you're not asking a question, if you'll put your microphone on mute so we can reduce the feedback.
Okay. So I will go on to stormwater. Again, we have an SDC and rate study going on. So at this point for stormwater, it is included in our system development charges, but we do not have a rate for it, and we haven't really started doing an actual rate study on that. It's kind of in the project list, but we haven't had our consultant do anything on that yet. So that will be something we'll be looking at going forward, whether that makes sense to start charging folks in town a fee for stormwater. Albany is doing this now, but they have not yet adopted a system development charge. So we're kind of flip-flop from them. North tributary of Crooks Creek improvements. This is the project that most of this is actually going to be deferred till the next year, but we need to start doing some regulatory work. We at least need to do some design and figure out what's going to be required for permitting on that. MS4 support and legal fees. This is an ongoing issue for those who, if anyone is not aware, Millersburg, along with 4 other cities now in Oregon, has a lawsuit with the DEQ about the municipal separate storm sewer system permit that they issued. So there's still a ways to go on that, but we have some fees associated with that legal support. The Becker Ridge Detention Pond Modifications project is in this fiscal year. It's a fairly minor adjustment to some of those outlet structures. Then we want to do some inspection and cleaning of our catch basins and manholes, which we began this year. We budgeted for this year, but we didn't get very far on that. We are moving most of that to next year, as well as cleaning and TVing our pipe system. And then brush clearing in Crooks Creek Basin, we've continued to do this each late summer just to maintain the conveyance of that channel. Any questions on stormwater? Okay. Sewer. We have several projects with, well, one with one of our lift stations. The WRF, the Water Reclamation Facility, this is our jointly owned facility with City of Albany. We have a solids handling design project there, and then also a dewatering equipment and replacement project. We pay 10% of those projects per our agreement with Albany. Influent VFDs, variable frequency drive, is on the influent pump, another project they're doing there. Sewer rates and SDC updates, inspecting our manholes, cleaning and teething pipes. Those will just be ongoing maintenance activities in this fund. And then you see the fire station, Old Salem Road, I should say fire station, industrial property access road, sewer. Any sewer questions? And then water, we again have our SDC and rate study. Some cleaning and inspection and valve replacement at the water treatment facility reservoir. I believe this was planned for this year and is being put off till next year. We're working on some large meter replacement. We have some quite old large meters that serve our industrial customers that need to be replaced. And then the water within the access road in the fire station and industrial property area. And that was the last of the fund narratives. So we can go into the actual budget document if we're ready.
Janelle, on a couple of those projects that were pushed into next year, are contracts for pricing locked in, or are we subject to increases, and have we factored that into our budgeting for going forward?
So for projects that were not done this year and are moved to next year, those, I believe all of them are not contracted yet.
Okay.
If they were contracted, we put actual numbers in. For those that are not contracted, what you'll see in the budget is, and it's in the CIP, each year we're escalating it by by a factor based on construction cost indexes that are published each year. So, we do increase them for inflation if they're moved to the next year. However, I would say some of the street maintenance projects in particular, you know, well, any of them really, they're very dependent on what the local costs are. So we have seen some of those costs come in much lower than what we estimated, even after we've escalated, even without the escalation. So, but in general, yes, if we move them from one year to the next, we are increasing it a little bit to account for inflation. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Are you ready to move into the line item portion of the budget then? And we can start. Okay, Joe, go ahead and go back. This is just the line item summary here of our general fund resources. As you can see them, the administration is essentially our beginning, what we have available. Keep in mind that does include SDCs and reserve funds for the fire station.
Well, the parks SDCs
yeah,
are actually there.
of the total of the general fund resources there. So on there, and that includes, you know, revenue we're expecting this year for our operating. So any questions on that area? And Janelle, you have this in front of you on there, so we'll bring this up unless you, does everyone have their budgets in front of them, or you need us to scroll through so you can see them online?
I guess everyone, Kevin?
Yes.
Continue on.
All right. Okay. So let us know if you have any questions on this page of the budget then.
all of these will be further detailed in each of the other tabs.
Yeah.
Please raise your hand if you're awake. There we go. All right.
Right. So this is, then you can see expenditures by program, and then the percentages on how that comes out. So you can see our emergency services is our largest by program area. It represents about 48% of our total budget on there. So this is our revenues again. So you can see we have a general fund beginning fund balance of about 6.18 million, and you can see compared to the last year, we're projecting again, as I mentioned, to carry over about 733,000. Our current year tax levy on there, transfer from our enterprise funds of about 536,000. Land use fees, when you look at those on it. State revenue sharing, our franchise fees, and you can see the breakdowns of those that we have. We're not seeing, we estimated last year Pacific Power about 840, but what we're tracking for this year is about 819. So, so we're a little high on that, so we have adjusted that. And then you can see the remaining interest. You'll notice a big change in interest. So one of the things that we had done previously, we had talked about and talked with the budget committee about, and we can move back to this method if you want. We had been moving all the interest received from our accounts into general fund, which we were allowed to do on there. This year we have elected to show those going back into the enterprise funds and the accounts that have that, they're not general fund, they're non-general fund. We're also figuring, assuming based on what we see the rates are right now, that we will see a lower interest rate received on those funds as well. So that's why you see the reduction there. So you see, as we get into the enterprise funds, you'll see where we are showing the interest going back to those funds based on what they have. And then the Parks and Rec program resources and SDC resources here, our emergency services. So we're estimating about 2,000. Lake County, with the additional hours and stuff, we're seeing a lot more tickets written and things. So this is based on what we've seen so far this year. We're increasing what we're going to see coming back for Justice Court. And then again, you'll see, if you look at the building permit fees and the construction excise tax, we're talking about probably seeing about 175 million. Again, that's just due to the number of fees and things that we'll see coming in from those. Any questions on this, on the resources?
I know it's a small amount, but we dropped our park shelter user fees by quite a bit because we've had to cancel a bunch of reservations, and we expect that'll continue into the summer likely.
And then you can see again, we talked about the celebration resources. So they're expecting revenue from the event and from sponsorships they've already had commitments to. We're figuring pretty low there, about 9,500. So we'd see a net. When we get to that budget, you see we're looking at probably a net of about, I think we're budgeting 30. I don't remember if we added it to that or if it's a net. So restricted funds, the SDCs are in the general fund. Again, that's parks, 738,000, and then available resources about 11,877,000. Any questions there? If not, we'll move to general fund. So under personnel services, one of the things I do want to point out here to you, we have an office assistant that works just a little over half time right now. That it's been through a contract position up to this point through a staffing agencies. We're requesting to include that position in, move that to a city position. So you see there on the office assistant, we're budgeting $25,830. That was previously, as I mentioned, a contract. We're increasing the hours to, I believe, 1,400 hours to help address some of the needs that we have in the front office area with additional workload. And when we looked at doing that with what we're paying for the total cost for the package, it was within about 5,000 or 6,000 of what we were paying the contract, and we need to employ. She acts very similar to a city employee, but she's really not. You know, we still have the things. Does an excellent job for us. Someone we don't want to lose in the future. And those of you who've been in the office, this is Astrid. Those of you may have met her. So we are proposing that change and moving her into I think it comes out to about a 0.67 FTE equivalent there by bringing that in. So we'll see a little bit of change on that. Yes.
So do you have to pay some sort of bounty to the temp agency because you're hiring her? Or?
No. Okay, we just have to.
We just have to give them a certain amount of notice.
Notice.
We'll be able to do it.
Yeah. So if this is approved, we would do that. The other thing that I just want to point out also with regards to PERS, so there would be some very minor PERS costs associated with hers, but there was a change in the legislature this year. They came in and changed and are allowing employees such as I who have retired, they've removed the hour restrictions. I'm still contracted at halftime, and that's where I prefer to stay, but I will tell you that I'm doing more hours than halftime. But with that change this last year, the city now has to pay pay PERS on my portion. It's not a bad thing. So it pays it at where I retired at. So I was a tier 1 employee. But that rate, all the PERS that's collected goes into offset our unfunded portion of PERS. So it's essentially what we've done is inserted a savings clause here that will pay down that unfunded portion that cities have on PERS.
Just out of curiosity, Kevin, if you know, what is the unfunded portion that Millersburg has?
It's not huge. I'd have to go back. I can get it to you and share either at the next meeting or a council meeting. We get a report every year, but it's not real high because we've never had a lot of employees. Nothing like most communities. We only currently have one employee who's a tier 2. Everyone else is on the OSPERG, which is funded. It was designed more as a 401 type of program, so you don't have that. And I think you only had maybe 1 or 2 employees who have retired that were under the old tier 1 or tier 2. So it's pretty minimal there on it. So, and then the other change to this year also is the CCOP intern that council had approved previously for us to begin budgeting for. And Janelle, do you want to just give the budget committee a quick overview on that?
Yeah, so we have joined if you're not familiar with the MECOP and CCOP programs at OSU, it's an engineering internship program. And the interns do 2 6-month internships, one their junior year and one their senior year. So we joined the program and selected our intern for this coming year. We had chosen a summer-fall intern, so she would be in about mid-June. However, with the current situation, it is throwing a wrench into a lot of internship plans. We're pretty glad we didn't choose a spring-summer intern at this point. But at this time, we're budgeting for her to be here. It's a 6-month internship, so it's half-time, and works out to about half-time hours throughout the year, full-time for 6 months. And the rates are set by the program as far as what we pay them. So we are budgeting for 6 months of her time, and we'll see as that gets closer how we use her throughout the summer. But we've got plenty of work to keep somebody busy with in the summer and fall around here.
Any question on personnel services? All right, so the next you'll see here is under materials and supplies. A couple things that I will just highlight here. Under City Hall building, you will see we've budgeted, we're showing $15,000 for generator installation. We had, when we finished the update to the lift station at ATI, we have a generator that's available to us. We were looking at using it for the temp station, but due to how it's set up, it didn't work out. So we had Janelle and I were talking one day, and I know that the city has had discussions previously on bringing emergency power, having emergency power capability into City Hall. And I asked Janelle, I said, was anyone given any consideration, given to the fact that rather than trying to power all of City Hall, we look at a portion of it? Feel free to.
Well, for those of you who were around when that was going on, and I know there were a few of you, was that project quickly grew to over $100,000 plus, because at that point we were looking at powering the whole building and using it as an emergency response center. And there was a lot of discussion over how you could how difficult it would be to separate the loads and that sort of thing. So at that point, we never looked at the idea of powering just this west end of the building. And after some more investigation into how, when the addition was done over here, it looks like it will be feasible to use that existing generator we have with more our electricians to get it put in a transfer switch and get it wired up and wired and keep this end of the building running, which includes our IT equipment and the conference room down here. So it would give us a backup. It wouldn't give us, an emergency response center, but what we determined after that wasn't really a need. So
it will provide its emergency power, essentially from Kim's office back through. So we could have, it would allow us to stay up and operate, keep our phones up and operating. It would keep our computers up, and we could move everyone back into those that didn't have access back into the conference room. So it does give us a stopgap. Once the new fire station's built, of course, we'll have a meeting room there that we can go into and get to as well. But it does give us additional options. The cost is fairly low for it, so we have budgeted for that. The other thing I just want to point out, our cabinets that are both here in our meeting room, and if you get a chance, come by and take a look at them, and the ones on the west end are delaminating. So they have a laminate on them and fairly significant delamination on them. So we had the company that provided the new Dyson work for us. They looked at those. They said essentially what they need to do, the door panels trying to they have to essentially put new door panels on as their recommendation for that, because trying to pull the laminate off, take the glue off, and get something to adhere to it, we don't have a problem. They've never seen anything like that, so evidently they don't know. We don't know who did these originally, but something happened in their process. But we're seeing significant delamination of both the countertop and all the door fronts. So to do both of those in both ends, to come in and correct that, put new countertops down, and replace all the door fronts, $5,000. We're also proposing purchasing an AED here. For those that don't know, that's an automatic external defibrillator. Scott can attest to the deal. And then we just BARC, exterior lighting, and then we just have $10,000 for things that may come up: painting, electrical, carpet cleaning, etc. In the budget. So just wanted to point those things out. As I mentioned before, you can see where we are on. See an increase in merchant fees. We are seeing that now with more people doing online. We will also see it'll actually be payments right now with COVID, but we're also expecting to see an increase in that as we switch over to our new utility billing systems. It'll be much easier for people to pay online than it is currently with our current system.
Kevin, this is David. Do you guys know when that will be up?
We're hoping October, but we don't know yet. We're in the process of it right now. As I mentioned earlier, Kim and Jake were supposed to, I think it was March, we're supposed to be scheduled to go back. They're still working on some things and transferring data and looking at things, but hopefully by the end of this calendar year, we'll be switched over to Cassell. Everything else, I don't think there was anything big there on those. I think most of our contracted services and the other areas of needs are fairly, we did bump up caller ride. We're seeing caller ride increase. And one of the things, and having some discussion, Janelle, you want to talk a little bit about caller ride?
Yeah, so actually this was from discussion with Aaron yesterday. We have some money that we're showing in our transportation fund that when we get there, I'll show you what it is, and that we need to take out or at least change because it's actually money that's designated for transit and we don't have a transit service here. But it's possible that we could get some of that designated to fund caller ride. So we'll be looking into that in the future. It may not be something we change in this year's budget right now, but we may move caller ride into our transportation streets part of the budget. But right now it's part of our agreement with Albany, and they bill us for our services and we pay them on a quarterly basis.
Any questions on materials and supplies?
I have no question, but an observation. The Albany Boys and Girls Club application was for 10,000, and you've got a line item there for 5.
Yes, and the mayor's motion was for what we have in the budget.
Just making that clear.
Yes.
And I have a question also. I'm not sure they talked about this yet, but I see we have Valley Merchant Police scratched off. Are they covered someplace else in the budget?
Yeah, we moved them to the park because that's what they're doing. They don't get to park. And that's a few things that you see crossed out or with zeros, maybe because they moved.
Okay.
So for example, you'll see copiers stuck there. We put all that up underneath office and equipment software. Yeah. Kim, you're unmuted. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm not doing it, I swear.
You're unmuted.
I just muted us.
Okay, it just told me. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute the right person. She got it.
Okay.
And then while they're figuring that out, can I ask you to go back to the PERS thing for just a second?
Yes.
The difference last year to this year is $50,000. How did that happen?
Well, there's 2 things that occurred. My portion goes up 18. One thing we realized that we weren't counting in the So one of the things we weren't counting it in the. All right, let's try this again. All right, so previously we were not, there's one of the things is in PERS and we weren't capturing it under the PERS is the employer pickup. We just showed, so one of the things under contract, so we have our PERS rate that we pay for everyone. And then one of the things the city did, and most cities did this in lieu of wages a number of years ago, we also pick up 6%, an employer pickup for the employees. So employees initially were 6%. So some cities, a few cities don't pay that, but when they look at their wages and stuff, they bump up the employees portion to cover that 6% cost. So we weren't capturing that 6% cost here. So we put that in there. So part of it is that 6% for our employer pickup, capturing it. So we're showing all the PERS costs in one area. We realized it wasn't being shown there. And then also the my portion, and then there's a small portion for Astrid. And then part of the remaining of it's just based on what we're seeing for our predicted COLAs and step increases this coming year for our employees. So the PERS rate does change also. So we get an actuarial every year, and I think it went up for our employees. I want to say it was around a 3 or 4% increase also. So when you take all those things into consideration is where we end up with that increase. So as I mentioned, mine, which will actually be going to a reserve account, if you weren't to have that in there, would be about it would be about 111,000. And so that and the 6% employee pickup that we're counting there is probably the two biggest portions of that, along with the increase that we have this year.
Hey, Kevin, this is Darren. I respectfully request that you verify that information on the PERS, because my understanding is that there is no PERS rate increase this year. It happens every other year on odd numbered years. And so your PERS rate increase should be 0 this year. But all that having been said, I don't take any exception to the other stuff that you said.
The rate is, so you're correct, they do it, but they do it for a biennium, and when they look at it for those, I believe that there was a small percentage, I think, on our calculation. I know they have different rates, they calculate differently for the various, but it was when we looked at our formula, unless we did something wrong last year. I didn't look to see what last year's was, but we did have it was a percentage, there was an increase in the rate. And I think I might have it here. I can look real quick.
While he's looking, I'm just going to scroll down. So if there was anything else in here anyone wanted to ask about, you can take a look. You might have noticed, and we did this last year too, but we've moved Forrest, or the city attorney that was up above is 0 now, and it's all under legal services. Combined with
rental property by $7,000 from last year. Is that maintenance, upkeep? What's driving that increase?
It's our landscaping costs that we're paying right now on that rental property. And then, well, that plus then we've added some additional costs that we think we may incur for demolition. So I'd have to do that. I think the $480 a month is pretty close to what we had last year. Yeah.
And Darren, you are correct. I was mistaken. Yeah, it's the same as last year's. So it's primarily with the 6%, my portion, and the wage increases on it. And with regards to the house, we'd had some discussion with council about taking it down. One of the things that we're holding off on, Councilor Callan is aware of this. One of the things the architect mentioned is something we may want to consider is hanging on to that. We could probably see some cost savings if we were to make it available to the contractor instead of them having to rent and bring in a construction trailer or other things. So, and if their estimate was a high enough estimate, we thought it might be worth going ahead and maintaining that.
Yeah, it's actually in a perfect location for a construction site, job site, office. But there are some other structures on the property that we need to have taken down. So we threw in some extra money for demolition. We may not need all that this year for demolition, but we wanted to be prepared.
But is it possible that you could have the contractor do the demolition as part of that project then and sort of offset everything or wrap it all into one thing?
Yeah, what we'll probably do before that happens, we actually we have a document ready to go to see if there's anyone, for proposals that we could probably put out so that we have it, an answer back from it before we go to see if anyone's interested in potentially purchasing it to move it to another location or demo it for salvage, or if we have no interest in, we would know. So we will have the opportunity to put that out. That document's ready, pretty much ready to go, that we worked on earlier this year.
Yeah, and we had an asbestos survey done on it, and so we've started working on that. But like the old barn that's out there, we probably need to just get that taken down sooner rather than later, even before the contractor would get on board out there. So I'm sure that won't cost that much to take down, but there's some other things.
We've got some power lines that's been de-energized to it, but it may be one of those things that once we cut that power line that's going to it, we may see it just collapse. That may be the only thing that's holding it up right now. I don't know. So you can see the only thing we have in capital is actually what we had budget. We moved over this year for the parking lot. So that's the only capital we're proposing.
The planning consultants here does, we don't do that. That includes some money for the studies that need to be done to consider the UGB expansion. So that's why it's higher this year.
Any questions on the general fund portion of the budget? So, Mr. Chair, if you would prefer, we are looking at, I don't know if you have a time that you want to continue, we could use this as a stopping point and pick up from this point on and finish it out next meeting. What is the preference?
In the interest of time, we've been on this meeting for 3 hours and 23 minutes, almost 3.5 hours. I would recommend we stop for the evening, formulate any questions, and give everyone an opportunity to absorb the material. And if there are any further questions, we continue on next Tuesday. Is there any opposition to that idea?
I agree.
Anyone want to tally ho right now?
So if we did that, we would pick up with general fund parks, begin that.
Correct.
Complete that next week.
So
all right.
I do want to make a comment and an observation. First of all, I really appreciate the professionalism that the city staff has shown in putting together this budget proposal and the thought. And I think Mark also has done a fantastic job of leading this meeting. So thank you to Mark as well. So, and my wife, as it is our 31st wedding anniversary today, would very much appreciate it if we could end the meeting. So.
You should have said something a little bit ago, Darren. All right. Let's adjourn this meeting for the evening. We'll pick it back up with the Parks and Recreation Program Fund narrative on Tuesday, 5th.
Hey, Mark.
Thank you, staff, for your... Yes.
Mark, is the 990 phone number your cell phone, your office phone, or what?
990-7584 is my cell.
Okay, I'm going to be calling you probably tomorrow to apologize for the surprise tonight.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chair, before you adjourn, we did have an opportunity for public comment. I'm seeing a number. I believe it's Councilor Cowan, but there's only one person I don't recognize, and because I know he was having problems. So I think that is possibly Councilor.
Yeah, that's for, I'm on the phone. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing anyone else on connected, either phone-wise or other that would be a public wishing to speak. So I just wanted to confirm that real quick.
Appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you very much. Well,
all right,
everyone.
So we'll 6 p.m. Next Tuesday, we'll pick up with parks, and we'll also do the required public hearings. So we'll get an agenda out to you for that.
Thank you all for your time tonight and your work.
Good job, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Mark.
Well, thank you.
Congrats, Darren.